line with 24 seconds remaining. They go to Leader. Out to Weber. Weber, long one-hander. Good! Weber hit. Weber back to the bucket. 12 seconds. 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, up, good. 6 seconds. No basket. Foul call on Canada for charging. No basket. 6 seconds remaining, and the Cats will have it, and they'll face the pressure. Zhang will move it inbound. Somebody's going to have to shake free. They go to Weber. Weber, double team in the corner, and he is fouled. Foul is on Canada or Crane. Crane. Don Crane. Weber will go to the line. Weber is the man you would want at the foul line, and we certainly don't want to put any undue pressure on this young gentleman, but he has carried the pressure all year. Here's the shot. She's good. It's good. The least they can do is tie if they stay away from him. One more, and it'll nail the coffin lid closed. All right, Webb at the line. Bonus. Oh, good. It's good. 59-56. Long pass comes into Hawkins. He shoots. It's up. It's good. But that's all the time there is. And the Cats win. 59-58.
Hi, and welcome to this edition of our series of 100 years of Jasper basketball. This is live history because we have with us the people who actually performed, coached, and were a part of it. And this will be the first in a number of programs that we will have about the first 100 years of Jasper basketball, where we'll focus on the early 70s, one of the golden periods of Jasper High School basketball. I'm going to be your host, former basketball coach Ken Schultheis, and I'm going to be here to throw out the topics, a moderator, and sometimes maybe a referee, depending on where we go with this group. But what we want to bring to you, our audience, is an opportunity to understand not just the final scores or where the season started, where it ended, but how it got to those points. And to do that, there's no better way than to have the people who participated at that time talking about it. So joining me today on my left is Kevin Manley. He was a senior guard on the 71-72 Wildcats. Tom Nicholson, one of the main inside forces for the Wildcats, senior on that 71-72 team. Al Sang, who played two roles, came off the bench and also started half the basketball games during that season, and former assistant coach and later head basketball coach Rex May. Over to my right, we have the second winningest basketball coach in Jasper history, Ed Schultheis, who was the head coach of that 71-72 Wildcat team. We have Mike Liegers, who would end his career as the all-time leading scorer, which will be for another program, but was just a young sophomore on that 71-72 team. But what a job he did. And then the smiling guy, he got all the press. Dave Slick Weber, another guard, senior guard on that 71-72 team. Coach Schultheis, I'm going to start with you. Coming out of the 70-71 season, won the first sectional in several years, but you're coming out of that year, you've lost a couple of pretty good basketball players. One of the best basketball players maybe in the state at the time, Wayne Bailey, and one of the best athletes in Jasper history in Jim Wenzel. But as you come out of that 70-71 year, and even though it was a great year, you had some people that got their feet wet. Of course, Dave Slick Weber, double-figure scorer at the time, coming out of that season. Kevin Manley, who really got moving as a junior in that season. Tom Nicholson, who started to become, especially the second half of that season, really introduce himself as a strong inside player and a legitimate scorer for the next or future Jasper basketball team. So, Coach, you're coming out of that season. You've lost two great players. You've won a sectional first time in several years. You've got a young center that you're going to bring along in Mike Liegers. You've got a utility player. At least that's what you thought he was in Al Sang. What were your thoughts coming out of 71 and going into 72?
Well, I think Jerry Birds had us going undefeated Because we had the two of the finest guards in the state of Indiana at 5'10". But underneath, I knew Jerry was trying to take care of us as a state basketball team, Jasper basketball. But overall, those three, I thought we had a pretty good nucleus to work with. And with Mike coming on, being about 6'6" at the time, I think, we knew he had a lot of potential. And of course, little did I know that Al Sang, Mike Brown, and even Tommy Berger would battle all year for that position. And finally, I got to the point where I thought that Al gave us stability, played a very good role player, played good defense, and we had enough scores. We didn't think we needed to put a better. I think Mike Berger, or Tom Berger, was probably a better scorer, but Al gave us the nucleus of those five.
Well, I've got an interesting stat on Al that we'll bring up a little bit later in the program. But I talked with Jerry Burge today before we came up. I wanted to see if I could get Jerry to come up. You know, Jerry, a longtime sports editor at the Herald, and if it could be written or it could be said, Jerry would say it. Whether you liked it or not, it was going out there, a former player himself in Jasper. But one of the things that I remember being a young man, but talking with Jerry about was, first of all, he had pretty good influence around the state with a lot of the media people. And he did come into that 71-72 season, and he took Kevin Manley and Dave Slick Weber and said, we got a couple of all-state guards coming in. And he really pushed that. And one of the things that I remember about you two as the guards, you know, we were in the Pete Maravich era a little bit more showmanship, and there was Slick Weber spinning two balls on his fingers, and Kevin Manley never saw a shot he wouldn't take. Guys, did you have any recollection of Jerry and the media going into that 71-72 season? Kevin, did you realize that he was touting the Jasper Wildcats as a team to watch?
Absolutely, Ken. I felt like maybe he's putting a little pressure on us early to let us know that what was going to be happening over the course of the season. But in our conversations, he was always very positive, and I always remembered that. But when we messed up, he wasn't afraid to let us know about it in the paper and on the radio and different things. But Slick, what do you think?
Game number 5, this is what Jerry Burge wrote. We lost to Memorial at home in 2 overtime. The first line in the article says, the Jasper Wildcats turned in an appalling display of basketball Friday night. So yes, he was not afraid to tell it like it was. But
2 overtimes.
2 overtimes, got to be 2 overtimes. Yeah. An appalling display. But no.
The whole town was honest.
Not
just Bird.
I tell you what, that's getting back to 77, 70 and 71, Kenny. I think we got as high as 3rd in the state. I believe at one time earlier in the year. Wayne Bailey should have been All-State, All-Star. Jim Van Heist was on that team that started. Gary Stratman came off the bench. Mike Bonifer, Kevin, Tommy Berger didn't play much that year, but Nick was starting. I mean, that was a hell of a ball club, and unfortunately for us, we got upset in the final game of the regional. And I think that kind of set, we won a sectional for the first time in 8 years, maybe 9 years, 8 years. And it gave us a taste, and I think it let us know that Jasper basketball was back to where it should have been. And when we went to sectional time and all that, which we'll talk about later, I think there was no doubt in our minds, anyway, that we were going to win this, sectionally.
In a town that still was just 20 plus or so years removed from the state championship, there's great fever, great fervor, and a belief that in this one-class system in Indiana, since the Wildcats had done it in 1949, they could get it done again. And most of the people that lived in the community at the time had some recollection, had some connection or memory of that 49 state championship. Nick, as you're growing up and you get into high school and you start to get into that basketball presence, did you get that sense of how much the community loved and believed that Jasper basketball could be a state champ again?
We were just like on cloud 9. All the fans, the fan base, our friendship throughout the year was just beyond belief. If you were a citizen of Jasper, the biggest thing was to have a season ticket. If you didn't have a season ticket, you were outside trying to sneak in or what. But it was just great. The gym was packed every night. It was crazy. I mean, we'd make our run out to the warm-ups. The whole gymnasium was just full of just craziness. And at our away games, I know I had a lot of my older friends, Skip and Beamer and Bomber and those guys would hop in a car and drive to Evansville or Boonville or wherever and root us on, and it was awesome.
And the thing that probably people need to understand is everybody felt a part of the team in some way, even if you weren't on the team. If you were in the stands, you had a role to play. If you were in the band, you had your role to play in that gym. Everybody seemed to be connected with that. And as seniors, Al, was that important to the rest of your senior class to be connected, to be a part of it?
Oh, you bet. I mean, the friendships that we had, between the basketball team, the football team, it carries over in one sport to the next. And basketball in particular, we had this thing that had built up inside us over the years. After seeing so many sectionals, I remember as a kid going with Hard Weber and Slick over to the sectional in Huntingburg and watching us lose. And we just felt like, if we ever get the chance to get on that floor, we want to win in the worst way. And just to finally get to be a senior and start on a team that went over there and played in that sectional, I couldn't imagine anything else.
I tell you what, just to add to that, when we won that sectional, really when we won the regional, I felt more pride for the community. I thought we did something for the community. I mean, I felt great inside and for us guys and all that, but I was so happy for Jasper because they supported us so well, and I was like, oh my gosh, we brought something back to Jasper that they haven't had in 9 or 10 years. I mean, it was really good.
It was awesome. We had this old lady, and I can't remember her name, Ed, had Kevin Kelly and I come over to her house to give us $50. So we
That's illegal. There goes our regional title.
To eat at Heichelbeck's. Do you remember her name?
She lived down the street.
She lived down the street from you guys.
I don't.
Wonderful woman, and gave us a
It wasn't Emma Daggs, was it?
Yeah, Emma Daggs.
Was it
Yes,
Emma
it
Daggs?
was Emma.
Emma
Yes,
Daggs.
yes.
You didn't
God
know
bless her.
She said
Just
she
a
said
little
take the
guy.
whole team out, and you and Kevin Kelly grabbed the 50 rings.
Well, between Kevin and Nick, there wouldn't be.
You're right, I remember you telling me that story.
And she gave us a little bump of homemade wine.
Knowing Emma, she would.
Betty Heichelbeck did
God bless her.
Every year. Every year.
Oh, we
That's what we
and Mike's father, the cars to the regional and the sectional, he supplied all the cars. Bob, your father was one of them.
72 Catalinas maybe.
Oh, yeah. Could have bumped it up to a Bonneville, but
That's right.
yeah.
And Mike, and we call Mike Leahy, by the way, so when we refer to him as Leahy, that's who we're talking. You're a sophomore, and I mean, you're the virgin on the team. You're the newbie to away. You've got some leading, I mean, the senior class is a strong senior class. They've been there. They're getting the press, but you're coming in. You're from a basketball family. Your brothers have played before you and played very, very well. Your body's still growing. You're growing into it. What are your initial thoughts going into that season, realizing that you're going to participate, that you're going to be an important part of that varsity?
It was a real privilege for me to play with these guys. They were all good athletes. It was a lot of fun. Jasper's fans were the best. The gym was so loud you couldn't hear yourself think for a couple of days. The games were over. Of course, you had the 50-piece band on the sideline where it was great. And the out-of-bounds line was right next to the players. And there's no atmosphere like it. There never will be. There's no gym like that. And it was so much fun.
That's right.
Yeah.
Coming through that line was right there.
Yeah, the whole football
Out of bounds
team.
line. The football team
Yeah.
sat on that
I
The
remember
outback line was right there.
making a statement one night in the gym. He turned to me and started giving me some basketball information. This place gets any louder, it's gonna blow that good ball.
It got loud.
It was
It
great.
got
I
loud.
thought you were gonna give me some basketball now.
The voting game was probably the loudest I
Oh.
That
Which-
was the high shriek.
It was just, yeah.
2-point loss
Yeah.
At home.
at home.
Yeah.
But Mike, were you concerned about whether you were ready or whether you were going to be excited? I mean, were you confident about stepping into that role, or were you apprehensive?
Somewhat nervous. These guys have played more basketball. It's my first year playing, and I was concerned about being able to step in the role to be able to hang with these guys and play with them.
And he did it. He was horrible.
But it was a lot of fun. It was a privilege, and you can never forget the Jasper Jam.
Did you play JV your freshman year?
Played team, yes,
The whole year?
yes.
That's what I thought.
My first time playing was my sophomore year.
And Coach May, you come over, you're a former head coach and outstanding high school basketball player yourself, and you come over, you become a part of what I believe, and I can't speak for Cabby's group, but I believe was the best staff Jasper basketball has ever had. Even the time I was here, I just saw you and Coach Schulteis and Coach Yarbrough, God rest his soul, and you put together a formidable staff. As you look at a young Mike Liegers, and you look at the seniors that are a part of this team, how did you view that year coming off that sectional championship, and how did you look at how do we get these guys ready to defend that?
Well, first of all, you've got to give Coach Schulteis credit because he let Yarbrough do everything. And my job, I thought, was to try to get the reserves ready for the varsity. And I knew the varsity was tough in 70 and 71, and I knew that these guys could play. I knew they didn't like me because I wanted to get better. I pushed it. And, that was my job. It wasn't a popularity contest, it was to try to get better. And why they won is because, just like you said, they accepted Mike as a sophomore. Not all seniors would do that, and not even Jasper. So therefore, I think that was a big honor for him. He had some ability, and for the seniors that accepted him, and they played well as a team. So I thought.
Speaking of the staff, we were very, very fortunate. Coach Stezik at grade school level, Hart Weber, my father at Holy Family.
Pat Mullen.
Freshman year, we had the privilege of playing for Don Napa as a freshman basketball coach. My sophomore year, we had Rex May, and then my junior and senior year, we had Coach Ed. If you could pick out a finer lineup to educate us on basketball and how to act like men and what have you, I mean.
We were
Slick,
very fortunate.
we worked hard for these guys, and you guys made us work hard. But at the same time, we had a lot of fun on the way in there. We had a lot of goofing around, good times in practice, and I think coaches, they aren't as tolerant of that. But we could have practical jokes in practice, and these guys they were okay with it. But then they get us back to work. And I thought that was pretty neat.
Sophomore year, playing Huntingburg over at Huntingburg JV. We're not playing very well that first quarter. Remember this?
I think so.
Rex says, put in 5 new guys. He called us all over. We're about ready to sit down. Rex went, just keep on going, boys. And he made us go into the dressing room. And we're sitting in our dressing room. Nick goes, let's just go out there. And I went, hell, we're not leaving here. We're not leaving here until Coach comes in and gets us. And he came in and got us. I'll say that. He got us good. But he made his point.
I meant let's go out the door.
Yeah, let's get the hell out of here.
What you want?
I can tell you as I played for Rex when he was the head basketball coach and JV coach, and I can tell you, I experienced a few of those things, but I always thought he was fair, and he always wanted us to get better.
We were fortunate, we really were.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they brought out the best in us, really did.
Let's talk a little bit about the season and get into the first half. The first half, you guys started out 9-3, and maybe you guys can bring up some games. But one thing I wanted to mention and start with Mike over here. Mike, you come in as a sophomore. You don't score the first game. I think you might have been a little sick. I'm not sure. At least that's what the paper printed, so we'll go with that.
I've had a case of the nerves.
Okay. We played Washington, we beat Washington. You didn't score. I want to make this point because I think this is important to understand the makeup of this team as the year went on. In the next 19 regular season games, you will score in double figures, all of them but one, and that game you will have 8 points. So you conceivably could have gone, and I think you missed a couple free throws that game. The first game you didn't score and you were in double figures for the next 19.
Wow.
When you went into that first game and you've got nerves and maybe you're not feeling well, was there some point where one of these guys or you heard your dad or a brother or one of the coaches kind of, you're ready to go south, pull you back? What was that moment, that point where I'm a varsity player? I know I had a player named Scott Rowland. I know I had to get in his face and tell him he wasn't a sophomore anymore. He's a varsity basketball player. But what was it for you?
You know, I think for me, I had people around me that were great passers. They were great players. It was easy to play with these guys. And of course, Tom could jump. You know, he could jump to the ceiling. And I would just try to get a few rebounds that Nick couldn't get when he hit the floor. Nick was operating the recovery room, and I was down at floor level. So, yeah, it was.
I can remember Rex telling Leaguey, as we call him, you're gonna have 8 or 9 rebounds, and you only got 2 or 3. I mean, he wasn't complimenting him. He was telling him, go to work. And he was probably working, but he was on him a little bit.
Just trying to
motivated him a little bit.
Get to the next level. Get to the next level.
He got the confidence. I remember you getting on. Well, you not only got on him, you got on Nick too. I got on Kevin most of the time. I said, get the ball to Nick, Kevin.
After that first game, I didn't have a great game, and I came in the gym Saturday morning, and Coach May grabbed me as soon as I hit the floor. He goes, "Get your butt over here." And I said, "Okay." I went to one of those cycles. He goes, "You've got to hit these shots." And he worked with me for over an hour. He's saying, "This is what you do." And I went, "Okay, this is what I do." You know, so yeah, they weren't afraid to get on you and let you know. Not your limitations, but your ceiling. You know what I'm saying? You gotta get up here.
I think that's a great point.
Get up here.
I think it's a great point, Slick, because a lot of times coaches will, the game's over and we'll get ready for next week's game next week. I feel like the coaching staff that made up your group was always looking, how do we get better immediately? How not do we just get better for the next game or the next practice? How do we get better during the game that we're in? Like you said, Coach May, getting on you about rebound. You gotta have more rebounds, halftime, whatever it is. Coach, you talked about Coach Schulteis allowed you to do what you needed to do, and Coach Yarbo to do what you. How was the communication between the staff during that period?
Well, it could have been any better. That's the point. In other words, that's the point I'm trying to make. I came in here, and he accepted me, and I accepted him to do what he needed me to do. And so did Yarbo. And so we come in here, I asked him if he wanted me to run a certain offense or whatever for the reserve. He said, just do whatever you want to do. And we'd hold the ball sometimes against teams, and we'd do this and that. And this helped, I thought, helped them prepare for when he got up there. You know, they got to him, and he said, that they don't question him. They just do what he tells them. And I thought that was part of my job, was to convince these people that we knew what we were doing, we're trying to get it better. And then when they got to him, they were better, and they were going to do what he wanted to do.
I don't know if any of you guys played on the reserve team as juniors.
No.
I did some as a junior.
Al did.
But that was the reason
To get it better.
I wanted him to get certain guys better. We put them down there, and they would accept it. Today, I don't know whether they would accept it.
Not many.
A junior saying, "Oh, I don't want to play down there."
You know, Coach, that's one thing that you did in our era that was different, at least than what I see today in some cases. Every step of the way, you had to earn your next step. You were on the freshman team when you were a freshman. You were on the sophomore. If you were a sophomore, you were on the JV team if you made it. If you had potential and you were a junior, rather than sit on the bench on the varsity, you put us down on the JV to get the experience that we needed. And we knew we had to earn that position and that spot and that opportunity. It wasn't given to us. And I think that made us a much better team and better players.
Well, I heard outside coaches come to me and said, we'll get you next year. They didn't know we had a pretty good reserve team, and maybe it was 16-2.
Yeah.
Probably better.
And
Always a good record.
3 or 4 of them could have been sitting next to me every game playing manager or two. I remember Joe Todrank said, yeah, you finally got rid of all those big guys. This was a few years after. You guys had
Bailey
gotten
and
that.
Vanna.
Toe drink.
He said, we'll get you next year. I said, probably will, Joe. Joe
5 sectionals later, he's still trying.
Gee, Joe.
But I coached Stan Geisler, a few of those guys after you played on it. Rick Bakley.
Yeah.
The guy him and Stan averaged 18, 19 points a game or 16.
Stan Geisler, his junior year, I looked this up, his junior year scored 2 varsity points. That
Yeah.
tells you something. 2.
Is that what
And
it
his
was?
senior year, he averaged 20, or right at it.
But he got to play with him.
We
whole
made a
year?
little change with Stan, which was probably good. We always played him the guard his freshman, sophomore year, and he really wasn't a guard.
He's a wingman.
So we were talking about this, and I said, we suggested that we drive it forward, and he was tough. And his senior year, he was tough. And he kept improving on the reserve team as a forward.
Yeah.
He could shoot the ball, he could pass, he could do things, but he just didn't have the, let's say, number 1 guard where he's gonna.
Well, it took time for you to was coming off the football field.
Yep.
I
That
knew
chipped
you
bone in
could
my
play.
elbow for a
Except I
second.
watched you all year up with us or with Rex. And it's just biding time, really, thinking we need a role player.
And Coach, you make a good point, because I think a lot of times in this day and age, unfortunately, and I see it working with some of the youth teams and kids I've been around, they're asking these kids to specialize already. And I can think back in my teams in the 90s, and I know your teams. Your teams were best when you had multiple players who did different things. Yeah, you had some that just played basketball, but you had some that played football, baseball, ran track, did a little bit of everything,
The only thing we
exercising
wouldn't
those
let do is
different
wrestle.
muscles.
We had to have them the same season.
Jumping on, as we talk a little bit more, this was an up-tempo team. You guys could put a lot of points on the board. And I'm going to tell you a stat. You had 4 starters in double figures, Nick leading the way. Nick, we're going to talk a little bit about that in a couple minutes. Mike Liegers was a double-figure scorer. The guard duo, the tandem here, they were double-figure scores. But here's a guy that I want to focus on for just a minute, Al, saying, Al, a very even-keeled, smart, cerebral player. Cerebral player. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Very even-keeled, did what he needed to do for the team on the court. But here's a statistic, a couple stats I want to bring up. When you started, the 12 games you started, the Wildcats were 9-3 that year. And if you take out one of the games where you scored 0 points, if you would have had just your normal scoring game, you would have had 5 double-figure scores on that team, because you averaged almost 8 points a game, a little over 7 points a game in those 12 games that you started. I'm talking as a starter. I thought, when I looked at that and broke that down, because I went through and looked at each player and where they came in at, I thought that was a heck of a stat and a heck of a credit to you, because you weren't inserted in that lineup when I was talking with Coach Schultheis because you could score. You were inserted because for some reason Mike Braun had got hurt, obviously, but you gave a team a mix of the guy who was willing to do all the other things. And in that process, you're scoring, in many of those games, double figures.
I think I was happy accepting the role of being a defensive player. As a matter of fact, I enjoyed that. We played zone a lot. When we did play man-to-man, I was kind of fired up when Coach gave me their best offensive player to guard. I thought that was a challenge, and I felt
I
good
was
about
fired
it.
up, he gave it to you too. So.
The other thing is, though, Kenny, you got 4 guys like this that put it up 20 times a game. You just don't touch the ball very often. You got to get a rebound and you want to score.
And we laugh, but there's a lot of truth, because as I looked through the stats, there were several times when 20 shots, they were 20 shots.
He hit 15 of them.
High scoring was get an offensive rebound, get some garbage around the basket. That's kind of how it was.
But Kenny, to your point, he did do all that stuff. I mean, it made this. You can look at all the stats you want, but it doesn't show what he did for this
Yeah.
team. He did. He was.
He did a little bit
He
of
was the
everything.
one that
Yeah.
kind of.
Did you see that in him, Coach
defender.
May? Did you see that he was that type of player that,
I can remember when I had these guys, sophomores down at New Albany, and they were on the reserve team, and Tom Berger was the other person. And we go down there, and we won 60-58. And we went in halftime, and I said, Nick, you and Al got to get some damn rebounds. And the managers, or scorekeeper, said, well, they got 8 and 9. I said, that's wrong. I said, you guys got to get some rebounds. And, we got back, and I told Coach after our game, I said, you're going to have to score 100 points to win this game tonight. And it was 98-100. And we got beat 2 on the varsity. Didn't we, or did we?
We won.
By 2. Not, it was 100 to
Big
98.
Mitchell, those guys.
And they were right up.
Mitchell. Yes.
Charlie?
yes, he was sophomore.
Our senior year, we beat New
We
Albany.
beat New Albany at New Albany.
Nick went off. Nick
Yeah,
had-
we'll keep talking about that game in a
Kelly
minute.
told those guys, remember how they squeezed the shooter on the bench?
Yes.
Worse than Jasper, worse than
Oh, it was a
Jasper.
mess.
Play.
Kelly got up and said, just shut up and sit out, because every time I get up, he's, shut up, coach, sit out, coach. So Big Kelly gets up. He's not playing much for us, but he's my body.
He was big.
He said, sit out and shut up.
He was 6'6", 250.
Yeah.
Kevin was, yeah.
He's a big guy.
Big boy.
Anyway,
He's right though about that. He told me, he says, I said, but you told me that before the game. I think I'd stay at home. If we had to score 98 points or whatever it was to
it was
win it.
98-100. And they had one bouncing around.
Yeah. Nick Mitchell was ping pong with it. We couldn't get, even Nick couldn't get out there.
Well, you know,
But you had about 25.
he had a great night, and we're
Nick had a
gonna,
big game.
we're gonna get into a
I
couple
think he had
of
about
those.
15.
Yeah, it's a good game.
I think I even hit free throws that night.
You did, in fact, you hit 4 in a row at one point.
There you go.
We needed every point we could get that.
You guys were 9-3 through that first half of the season, after actually a rough start. You had some questions, and then you guys got on the road. Before we jump in a little bit more, I want to ask you, because I think every team, every player on the team goes through this. There's the coaches, there's your teammates, the locker room, the time, there's your classmates or your girlfriend, but you got to go home. You know, and everybody's dad, when you're, I always said this, parents are okay except when their kids are playing, but as a coach. But how was it, just if you could, each of you could give a 30 seconds a minute, just, your parents had to be proud of you. They want you to be the best. Do they want you to be the leading scorer? Are they telling you to shoot more? Are they telling you the coaches are done? I mean, what is your ability to handle going home and then coming back again? Let's start with you, Mike, because you're from a family of basketball players, and I'm sure they all have.
You know, we hated to lose, and if you lost the game, it was do or die. It was a big thing. That was the only game in town, and then you had to face some armchair coaching when you got home that night, and from a few brothers in particular. But yeah, you hated to lose, and just a great place to play, greatest fans, and just a lot of great memories.
And Slick, I know Howard was a diehard hoops guy and had a little connection over there at Lagodi. And, what was it like for you?
Well, let's see. My father always said, I don't care what coaches tell you to do, you do. Period. You don't question them. He always said this line, you're going to have to bleep this out. If he tells you to go over the corner and shit, you better be stupid and straight. That was his line. That's what he always said. But anyway, I remember I kind of started off rough. I was supposed to be a good shooter and all that. And sure enough, one day after school, we're taking you to the eye doctor. I don't need glasses. He goes, there must be something wrong. You can't hit anything. I said, Dad, you're going to waste your money. I'll never put them on. Sure enough, Dr. Metzger gave me glasses. I came home, put them in the cabinet, never put them on. But he loved basketball, as you well know. He took me, when I was young, he took us guys everywhere to watch Jasper play. He took me to Indianapolis to watch teams play. And Yeah, it was really something to go.
And Kevin, how about you on the personal side?
Well, my dad took a little bit of a different approach. I could have the best game in the world, and he would never say that. He'd say the team played well tonight. You guys really fed each other. You hit the open man. It was a good game. He always spoke team. Never once said anything. Now, if I screwed up, it's a little different. He'd say, "Hey, you missed Webb in the corner over there." You know, he would say something like that, and then he'd be right on to saying, "Hey, but the team played well." And so, I was very fortunate to have a dad that you know, treated me that way and didn't put any extra pressure on me, and he knew how much I loved it, and so.
How
yeah, it
about
was
you,
good.
Nick?
Dad really was kind of a quiet guy. He would encourage me. We'd shoot baskets in the backyard. But one thing I remember from him is after we won the regional, I worked part-time at Jofco where he was a manager. And you got all these guys from Lagodi that all from Washington, from Lagodi, and here I am. And if you recall, I took a charge.
Yeah, I recall.
Yeah, I recall.
And Slick made the free throws, make a long story short, I would walk by these guys from Lagodi and Washington and just light them up just by going like that. And they would go crying to my dad, and my dad would go, "Deal with it."
That's pretty good
But
comment.
that was the fun part of working at Jofco, was playing with those knuckleheads from Lagodi.
Al, what about you?
You know, my parents they weren't big sports fans. I think a big thrill for them was our senior year. When, you know, at Cabby Gym, if you got a front row chair seat, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Gold.
So as
Gold.
parents of a player on the team, you know, they got a real nice seat, front row, right behind the team, and they were just thrilled to death to have that. And as far as going home after the games, they wouldn't say much of anything, but I used to sweep floors at Jasper Cabin on Saturday mornings in my high school days. Mom and Dad didn't say a whole lot. Boy, when I went down to Jasper Cabin Saturday morning, these guys would just lay into it.
Oh,
What the heck happened last night? Or, hey, good, you know, these guys weren't afraid to talk, and that was
That's
fun.
typical
That was
Jasper.
interesting.
That was a Jasper fan. I mean, they lived and breathed it. But you know, I think back in not just our parents, but all parents, it was all about, like Kevin was saying, team. They couldn't care less about my individual stats and all that. They just wanted us to win, and that was it. I mean, period.
And we played off of each other, and we're good friends, and have remained that way over the past 40 years. I respected Ed and Rex, and it was just a team effort. But it was really cool playing for the Cats.
Let's get into some guts of the year now. Like I said, you got to about 9-3. You get into that second half of the season, and some issues happen. I think in the last 8 games, you were 2-6 during the regular season. A couple of things I'll throw out there just so people know that you guys just didn't totally fall apart. Nick sprains his ankle. You were injured for a little bit.
Yeah.
Mike Brown gets hurt as well. But a saving grace in a way for Al because it allows him to jump up and start really getting the basketball going. Leahy continues consistently as that young sophomore. But when you guys hit those last 8 games, I'm going to start down on that end with Coach May. You hit a bump. I mean, 2-6 out of the last 8, 1-7 at one point, or 1-6 at one point. From a coaching standpoint, you and Coach Schulteis, what are you thinking? What are you talking about?
Well, I'll tell you what, we played Tell City. And I remember we had a little trouble. We had some trouble, but you get some people hurt, you know. You're not going to be as good. And we weren't not as good. So, but Ed was catching a little trouble at that time by fans, you know, different ones. And if you remember, we come home one night for the ball game, and I took the team down to the dressing room. And I talked to him. You didn't go. And it worked out.
Absolutely.
Elaborate on that a bit, Rex?
Well, no, because it,
Well, I remember pouring. Never mind.
We played Tell City at home that night.
Him-
Yeah.
We probably lost our third or fourth game in a row.
Yeah,
And the following night we went to New Albany, and that's when I
yeah.
think was a turning point as far as us.
Oh, I agree.
Rest of the night we won, though. Yeah.
Well, and Rex telling me I couldn't pour piss out of a boot if the director
Yeah.
told me why.
Yeah. What things, the night that we went down that dressing room after we lost 3 or 4 was for him, not for the team, because I didn't want you to lose any belief in him, because it wasn't his fault. And you know, when people get hurt, hey,
It's tough.
well, you
Yeah.
just gotta play through
And,
it.
and I'll say this for Coach Schulteis, when we talk a little bit about that time, you know, the first thing he says is, it wasn't, I said, was there a problem on the team? And he said, no, we just ran into, one, some very good basketball
Oh, yeah,
teams.
definitely.
And two, we just were losing people, key people at inopportune moments, and it was, how do we get through and handle the storm? And when you look here, Slick, you've got Bossy, Bloomfield, Terre Haute North, Tell City, New Albany, Wrights, North. None of those in the basketball world of the 60s, 70s were slouches. Those were all good basketball teams.
Really good.
And
Larry Deacon.
Coach,
2 or 3 guys went Division I.
you have Tom Nicholson get hurt in the Washington game. I think he had 16 up to that point. You've got Manley getting. What are your thoughts? How do we keep this? Because let's face it, as a coach, you're here and you don't maybe hear the fans, but you hear the fans, and you got Jerry Birch, who's very clear on his stance. But you know, you had a team that was 9-3. You know that you have a team when they're together, they're a pretty good basketball team, and you're not getting blown out. You're playing close games. You're just not able to get over the hump.
Well, I can remember after went through 2 or 3 of those losses, and we were pretty close, you know, no matter a bucket here and a bucket there. But I can remember you guys said we kind of blowing our season as far as wins and losses. We've got one thing left, and that's the section. So let's point to the section. Because if we win a couple ball games, got to make it 16-4s, because we're probably going to break even or something.
You know, the one thing, Kenny, at that time though, that I do remember, and I think through that time when we were talking about our team, no one ever said Nick sprained his ankle, no one ever said
No,
that.
we never made that.
We didn't talk about those things, but we actually, during that time, played hurt. That's not an excuse, you know,
No.
but we stayed with it. We never lost faith in each other, and we didn't like losing, but there was some really close
And I
games
knew
that
we
we
was playing
lost.
some good teams.
And
Whether
and
the fans
coaches
know it
were
or
out.
not, we know we're
Well,
paying.
It was about the same.
I don't think either one of you coaches know this, but when we were 9-3 at one point, and we held a team meeting, and I told the guys that we wanted to be the next team to go 11-9 to win the state. So I said that these last 8 games we got to go 2-6. And hell, we did it.
They followed the old leaders.
Yeah.
Hell of a strategy.
Well, we're in the second half. You're 2-6, but let's, Nick, we're going to jump on you a little bit.
Oh, boy.
Tom Nicholson comes into his senior year, as I said, had a nice second half as a junior, really showed what he was capable of doing, and decides I'm gonna focus on this basketball season. You're scoring about 17 points a game. You can jump out of the gym. I mean, you can jump out of the gym. You're 6'3" and you're jumping over the rim, and you're not just 6'3", but even today you're a big, strong 6'3". But you hurt your ankle, and you're out a couple games, and you come back, but you're not 100%, but you're slowly getting there. And then it's the New Albany game. And New Albany's 10-5. They've got the makings of what will be a team to go to the finals of the state championship and win it. And Charlie Mitchell, Norman, all these guys. For the Jasper fans, for the people listening to this tape, and we mentioned it earlier, to go to New Albany at that time, it's still a tough place to play. It was tough when I took my teams in there. The place was packed. It had almost football-style bleachers. The fans were right on you. It was a cracker box that was bigger than a cracker box, but you felt like you were in a cracker box. Was there incentive because it's New Albany and Charlie Mitchell and all these? what are considered an outstanding athletic team in that part of the state?
You know, I think it was Ed and Rex before the game saying, you know, these guys are good, they can, you know, blah, blah, blah. They put their pants on the same way we do, one, you know, leg at a time. We can beat them, we can stay up with them. And, you know, and I kind of, yeah, I scored a bucket and I go, yeah, this is cool, I got a rebound. Hey, yeah, I'm on these guys. I'm doing it. I'm up against these big boys. And that game I actually made some free throws. I think my free throw percentage was lower than my field goal percentage. But yeah, it was a good feeling. And I think the more I scored, the harder I played. Mm-hmm. And the closer we kept it, Kevin and Slick and Leahy, Al, they all came and we beat them. And it was a huge team effort.
It really was an intense, emotional game. I mean, even as a young guy, I just remember, but you seemed, whether it was because, you know, Mitchell was 6'8" or 6'9", whether they had the big physical, you looked like you were jumping higher than you, I mean, from being a fan, he was above everybody when he was jumping. I heard the Louisville TV stations after the game outside the dressing room waiting to talk to the coaching staff, talking about you played as if you were the 6'9" player out there, the way you were jumping and getting up above the rim.
I just, you know, when Ed put me in at center to jump and figured that I could out-jump 6'8", 6'9" guys, and that's what I did. I guess I got fired up and maybe played out of my league that night, but sure enjoyed it. It was a great win.
And for many who don't understand, we were still in the one-class system. Everywhere you went, the gym was packed, right, and rabid, and it was like that. But it seemed just so intense that night, and maybe it's because as a team, as a program, we had our backs to the wall a little bit with some of the close losses. They were a team that was very valued. New Albany was always thought highly of in the state. Mike, as you're playing alongside, I mean, you're 6'5", 6'6". Charlie Mitchell's 6'8", 6'9" at the time, and League's jumping all over the place, or Tom's jumping all over the place. What were your thoughts and memories of that game?
He had an impressive game, and just to watch his hang time above the rim was always something that I wanted to be, but I could never get a piece of paper underneath my feet when I on the floor. So, yeah, he had a great game, as well as the other players too. It was a great performance, and I remember it very well.
People forget that he had a break on this. You know, I tell you what coaches go through. That afternoon before we got on the buses, I was home. I got a phone call, and the guy never said anything except he wouldn't tell me who he was. I didn't ask him. You know, Coach, you'd do yourself a favor if you stayed home tonight. That's when I.
Thank God my dad didn't have caller ID.
The next day, Sunday morning, I was feeling pretty good. Went to church, was out in the front yard picking up big pieces of paper. I'll never forget it. Bud Saab came along in his car, and Bud was a very likable guy. You lucked one out last night, didn't you, Coach? That's typical Jasper.
Yeah.
That's good fans, though.
Sound familiar?
Don't do yourself a favor. You lucked one out.
And you guys, as the guard tandem, you're going into that game. It's a stage because you've got you don't have just the New Albany here, but you've got the Louisville stations. You've got a lot of fans from around, and I know that isn't your focus, but you know it's an intense atmosphere. You guys have got your backs to the wall. Did you, as the guards, as the leaders out there, as far as getting the team down the floor, getting things organized, did you guys ever have conversations and talk about where you're at, where you need to be, where's this, what do we need to do to turn this thing? Did you guys ever have those conversations?
You know, I still believe we believe we were going to be good enough to win. I mean, we never lost faith in each other, and we did hit a couple bumps in the road, but that particular game, and we've talked about that many times because it was probably one of the biggest wins in a regular season for us, because the next year they went on to win the state championship, and it was the same guys.
Yeah.
3 Division I players there, and Something that's interesting, and I got to share this with you. Just a couple weeks ago, I was at a Louisville golf show, and this 6'10" guy walks up and starts talking about golf in Jasper, and it's Charlie Mitchell.
Yeah.
It's the guy that played against Lee, and we started talking about Jasper basketball, and he goes, Mike Liegers was one of the toughest guys, and that Nicholson was out of his head that day. That was his
I
comment.
ran into him over here at St. Joe Church at a funeral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we talked, and basically, he said about the same thing to me.
And my,
said
my
you
one
got
comment
nothing
back
but
to him
time.
about that game was, I said, the thing that I'll never forget about that game was standing across from Julius Norman. That was a man.
Oh, he
And
was.
he had, his arms were bigger than my legs, and I thought, how are we gonna
To get back
contain
to
this guy?
what you, to get back to what you asked,
He was built like
I always considered us a smart basketball team. I didn't feel the need to tell Nick, you gotta be over here, because Nick knew where he was supposed to be. I didn't have the need to tell Leahy to do anything, because Leahy knew basketball. As far as going into a game in New Albany and stage and all that, I never thought about that. I always thought that we could beat any team on our schedule. I mean, that's where we were as a Jasper Wildcats, and I think the year before kind of set that up, that we could play against anybody, period.
Well,
This New Albany game, I don't know if you knew that, but they broadcast that the last 2 minutes out of the resting
Oh, did
over
you
the
really?
loudspeaker.
Is that-
The last 2 minutes of that game, yeah.
I mean, that the New Albany game, there were other signature games for us, some rivalries, but that New Albany game, I always felt like, even when I coach, it's a measuring stick, especially when you went there, because they always had a stock of players for the most part,
Oh, they did.
and you were going to meet a rabid following. You found out mentally where you were.
And Jeffersonville. Did we ever play them regular
No.
season?
No.
Jeffersonville.
We didn't play Jeff.
Just about remember
I'll tell you what,
the
how they
semi-state.
How they turn
That
it.
SIAC.
We had a beat,
Oh.
missed about 4 or 5 shots.
Yeah.
It wasn't, we
Oh,
came in with
Jeff,
a
that's
fire,
right.
and all the other
Wasn't Jeff
schools,
Ryan?
Terre Haute schools.
Yeah, talk about
Brian Winburn.
Coach Schulteis.
That's tough.
Whitburn played on that.
Oh, yeah. He was
They
tough.
just
Got
brought
killed
up,
in the plane crash.
He was tough.
Coach, they just brought up the SIAC and what a grind that was. And it was maybe, they talk about the North Central Conference at one point, but the SIAC, the number of teams and the quality teams, just one of the great conferences in Indiana basketball history, high school basketball history.
Southern Indiana was by far the best conference, south of Indianapolis.
We had
Oh, without doubt,
all the
South
Evansville
Oh,
schools.
Yeah, Evansville, yeah, Terre Haute
Central
schools.
Conference,
and all-
Terre Haute.
Yeah.
Richmond, Newcastle.
Lower conference, yeah,
Was
really.
Sands thrown in the mix?
No easy games at all.
No, it was tough.
And the year before, or the 2 years before, you had actually won the SIAC conference. So,
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Quite achievement.
Our sophomore year,
Yeah.
one side was Gary Corbin, Terry Fleckens.
Often think of that weekend where you had Tell City, New Albany, that was always the weekend
That's
you got
actually
to Tell City, New
how they
Albany
held the
weekend,
ball.
if you could
You
survive
Yeah.
that was a grind, you know, stuff.
you had,
North
I
Beach.
know we had
Harold Miles.
18 or 20 teams in
At
it,
that
Yeah,
big
oh,
kid,
yeah.
in the conference in those days.
Smith,
the Tell City, you're right. I mean,
Oh, it's tough, Tell City.
that's when Tell City had its.
just great, Jeff.
Lockmiller's on that team.
Players.
Tell
Bob
City
Lockmuller was a heck of a coach,
Tommy
and before
Crum,
that,
one of the best players ever come out of
Tom
Southern.
Crowd,
Kentucky, played well.
all right, in New Albany, you pick up that win, and like you said, my dad, Coach Schulteis, and he was feeling good on that Sunday. Everybody was. It's a great feeling to go on the road and win a game like that, a big game like that, and play the way we did with that exposure. But the season isn't done yet, and you've got the New Albany win, but you've got 3 games before. You've got Wrights that comes down the path, North that comes down the path, both of them against Evansville schools with Wrights and North. Wright's a pretty decent team. North, not a real good team. Both of them end up with losses. The Cats lose after that New Albany game.
They stole the one at Wrights from us.
Were you out of one of those games? Did you miss?
That's
The
when
North
Nick went
game
over
I
that
played
guy's-
a couple minutes.
Yeah, you missed. You
Never
Coach,
touched it.
Yeah, you Coach, you were still going through some injuries. Nick was back, but Kevin Manley goes down.
It's been so many years, I can't remember who was in and who was out, but I think the box score showed that he was out.
He was out, and then he played a couple minutes.
Yeah,
And Slick, one thing that I'd like to bring up is, as I look through the stats, and you always played pretty well, at least statistically, shooting the ball against the Evansville schools. Was it something about Evansville? I mean, what was it?
I have no
You
idea.
played pretty well.
Is that
I
right?
think
I thought I played pretty well against all the teams.
He started pretty good.
No, I tell you what,
Turn
I
that
don't
off.
know.
Cut.
You know, that goes back to that SIAC though. I mean, if you weren't ready to play, they'd just run over you. I mean, it was over. You better come out. So if you were- I mean, that's every Friday, Saturday night. It was something. It was.
And-
Terre Haute and 5 or 6 out of those schools.
But you guys don't give up. I mean, you come back, you lose 2, but you got Bedford. You got the sectional right around the corner. Bedford comes up. You get a victory over them. Al Sang, for whatever reason, Coach, you guys as a staff, you've decided you're going to start Al Sang in that game. And I don't think he started the last 5 or 6 games. In fact, I'm pretty sure he did, at least the way the box score read. Was it a move for, what was the reason?
I tell you the truth, I don't remember what spot that year. Did you start or not?
I started for a stretch, and then Mike had, I think we kind of entered that little area. But then, you know, Mike had gotten hurt too. So
Yeah,
there was-
Mike
there
got
was
hurt.
injuries.
That's
But
right.
I know that you reinserted him as a starter against Bedford, and from that point on, you started the rest of the
I
season.
feel like I had a really good game against Bedford. I can remember that. I think that got us kind of on a roll.
Yeah.
I still like we played really well that last game against Bedford, and I think we were mentally ready for the sections.
I don't think
No, we played well.
we should wait because it's such
Yeah.
high.
That Bedford game, I remember, probably about 2 or 3 minutes ago, it was a tight game, and you got undercut. You remember that? It came down right on your tailbone. And man, talking about scared, I was like, oh shit, get up, Tommy. You gotta get up. You gotta get up.
To you.
Yeah,
But we definitely needed Tommy for something.
And you go through as a sophomore, you've gone through 20 games. Physically, how are you feeling? Mentally, how are you feeling?
Feeling pretty good about our chances. I think we knew we had a lot of talent there, and I think we felt we could do pretty well in the tournament.
I think the biggest thing I get from this group, as from coaches on through players all the way down this table, is you didn't put, and maybe you did a little bit more at that point, but it sounds like your focus was where it needed to be. Let's just keep playing, let's keep getting better, let's keep working, and be ready for sectional time. That's kind of what I'm getting out of you guys as we talk about this. It wasn't so much we were 11-9 or whatever we were. We believed we can go to that sectional.
We wanted that section. We wanted it.
I said it earlier though, there was no doubt in my mind going over there, we were gonna win. I mean, there was no question in my mind. I didn't say that about the regional. I mean, the regional was different, but the sectional, I didn't figure it out either.
You know, Kevin O'Neill said to us before the sectional started, he said, you know, Mike, keep going to state championship in 1949, and 11-9 during regular season. That was kind of it.
That's Kevin's. He can say that because he's got a state championship. He can say that, couldn't he? He has a state
Kevin
championship.
just got off the golf course.
Guys, let's talk about tournament week, tournament time in Jasper. We alluded to it a little bit earlier, but this was a time when every business downtown decorated those windows, when every place had a sign of the Wildcats, individual cutouts sometimes. I mean, talk a little bit, go ahead, Nick, talk a little bit about that time.
God bless her, my Aunt Monica had Monica's dress shop.
I remember that, yeah.
And she would buy time with, was it Bob Simmers? She would buy time for Wits in my honor. And she would be on the radio and would guess, you know, who was going to win, blah, blah, blah. But she had her dress shop decorated in black and gold, and the Gramosbacher twins, they had that big old Studebaker.
Dodge
Dodge, it was all painted black and
Paint
gold.
back, black and
I mean,
gold, like
it
a
was-
Wildcat.
It was like we were on our way to the state, and it was just unbelievable. You know, people yell at you, wave to you, you know, want to give you a ride home, and it's like, who are you? My parents told me not to ride with strangers.
I tell
Everybody knew
you, you walk around that square though, and you know,
You know,
they were backing the
goosebumps.
Cats. They were backing the Cats. They were,
Bet.
you know,
They weren't worried about the
Good.
dollar from somewhere else.
they were worried about good luck teams in the tournament. It was
Yeah.
Cat, black and gold everywhere. Yeah, it was cool.
Any specific thing stand out for you, Kevin, during that time? I know as we get into the winning in the regional, but just
Yeah.
leading up to the tournament.
Well, we were practicing, everybody was healthy at that time, and our confidence was up, winning the Bedford game. And I think everywhere, like they mentioned, around town, it was decorated everywhere. We had local fans that took us out to dinner. They bought, Betty Heichelbeck, I gotta mention Heichelbeck's because every year she always fed our team. There were other people in the community, and I can't remember all their names.
KC had us down.
Yeah, there was different groups that had us, and as a team, it was really a great event. You knew they were behind you.
Yeah.
You knew you had the support of the community going over there, so good feeling.
And there's no better place to play than Huntingburg
No,
Memorial
great
Gymnasium, unless you play at home. But just think back to that moment as you walk in that gym. You're getting off the bus. I know that we were probably being hid in between Leagy and a few other guys because we didn't have a ticket, so Dad was sneaking us into the game. Me and Donnie and John. But as you walk into that, get off that bus or get out of those cars. You guys always took cars back then. As you get out and you get into that gymnasium, just real quickly, start with you, Al. What's your first sense? What's your first
It was
thought?
electric. I mean, when you walked, as soon as you stepped inside that door, it was just an electric feeling. You could sense that the whole gym was just anticipating, what's this game going to be like? How these guys are going to. You could just feel it, and it just generated and built on itself as the game started and as you got further into the game. It's just a tremendous feeling.
Nick,
That-
first sense.
Oh, just like Al said, it was just unbelievable. It was electric. It was dream come true. Here you are, 17, 18 years old, and you've got, I don't know how many fans, 6,200, twice the size of the Jasper gym, and half of them or 3/4 of them are against you. And I don't know, I think we were limited on tickets to what we got from Jasper. But it was, I love playing at Huntingburg. I don't think I ever got beat there except in the regional.
And Mike, what about you, as the young one?
Very great place to play, very loud, packed, great local rivalries, which made it good too. And just a place you never forget playing at, just like Jasper's old gym. It's a great place.
It's
A lot
like-
of great memories there.
It's like you had all those memories with your dad taking you in there. You're coming in as a player, and I know you've been there the year before. It's your senior year. What
Well, I've been going to sectionals. I think my first game was in Ireland Beach Springs Valley in
Your dad
63.
snuck you in.
Snuck me in there. That's cool. But so that gym, when I walk in there, and I wrote an article for Jasper Today online. Somebody might want to look at that magazine. But anyway, it touched all your senses. I mean, you could smell the popcorn.
Yes.
You could feel the anticipation. Your eyeballs bulk, especially when you came in at that top level and you looked and you saw the big old black and gold J for the cheer block, and there's an I over there for. It was special. I mean, you could hear that gym rocking for blocks away, and I'm getting goosebumps now. I mean, seriously. I mean, it was a special gym day. It was a special sectional. Those fans were.
And what about you,
great.
Ken?
Well, just to add, they pretty well covered everything. It is a special gymnasium, but one of the things that I always tried to do is take just 30 seconds before you start warming up and just look around and take it all in to get ready, because you're not going to be looking up there much during the game, so you just want to get a feel for what it was like. And if you couldn't get fired up to play basketball there that night, then there was something wrong with it. It just fired you up, and you were going to give it all. You were going to lay it all out there.
Coach?
That gym was as loud as Jasper's gym.
Oh, yeah.
On the night that Jasper was in there, we were having a dog fight with somebody, because they'd be over, like you said, 3/4 of them against us.
Oh yeah.
And we'd come back. I remember those fans would come back and just holler just as loud as the rest of that gym.
That's right.
I'm sitting down, Rex and I were sitting down like little boys. They better get the job done tonight. It wasn't quite that easy.
Did you always feel like when you went in that gym, you could jump a little higher, run a little quicker, shoot a little further out? I mean, the sense is part of it. from the smell of the popcorn to the little echoes that you would hear. It's just, Coach May, I mean, you've been there as an assistant, as a head coach, Huntingburg Southridge Sectional.
It was the best of the state, as far as I'm concerned. Never been anyone like it. And like they say, it's electricity, the competitives, Harlem's against Jasper, and they made us greater later on, but they were against us then. And everybody was against us. So it was good, but it's great.
Talking about jumping higher, I remember I did get called for goaltending against one of the Georgia boys.
Oh,
In
yeah.
that game.
Very Central.
Against
We're
Surrey
talking
Central.
about the Georgia boys coming up here.
Yeah, airmail.
Big. One Georgia, night we played him, beat him pretty easily. He took 30 shots.
Oh, yeah.
The box score shows him taking 30 shots.
Is that right?
He had 10.
You start out with a pretty easy win against Holland, although they,
Was Joe Chodrak the coach at Holland when we beat him?
I think he was.
I think he was. I'm pretty sure he was.
Because didn't he become the Southridge coach after that?
Yeah,
I
Greg
think he
said
was at
that.
Holland. Yeah, he was.
Say hi to Joe. Hey, Joe.
Yeah, I talked to Joe on Facebook quite a bit, actually. Then you go against Perry Central, and Perry Central was kind of unique. They really weren't connected to Du Bois County from the standpoint of the rivalry, but they were coming in. But they did have these big kids, the Georges, and brothers, and big, tall. And even though you guys probably thought, we'll handle them, the coaches may not have looked at. I know Coach Schulteis did. Now Rex might have been shy and said, "Oh heck, we'll beat
Oh, but
those
he
guys."
underneath.
But
probably
what,
was.
what are your?
They were good guys.
I mean, they were big. They were high
Guys
school
took up a lot
in
of space.
southern part of the state. A team the size of Perry Central School. Couple big guys. Was there any concern with the matchups?
No, not if they went to play. We talked about, because see, we had quickness, and Nick could out-jump them even though they were big. But they couldn't jump real well. Liggers, he played his role in there real well. And we had the best bigger guys. They were big, but we had the best team. That's the thing you gotta remember, we had the best team.
Probably a lot of transition baskets, probably, I would think, in that game, don't you think?
You
We
had
got quite a
Yeah,
few.
there was
let
a-
down.
there
It's
was a
like
really
let
good-
down and not take somebody.
Good
Yeah, we
consistent
were
scoring.
we were-
Yeah.
That's what they worried me, their height.
That's the
Yeah,
plan.
foul trouble.
We got them in foul trouble.
And the George-
Did you got him in foul
Yeah,
trouble?
got foul trouble, our quickness
Yes.
got.
Joe LeGrange,
Was it early in the game?
Joe LeGrand?
Got-
Joe LeGrange always thought the referees picked on his big boys.
Well, that one guy fouled out in the first half. Not one of the George boys, but another one.
Yeah.
He
You
always
got the
talked
last
about that.
score, yeah, we
I
did.
told hell, you let the guy in there with 4 fouls in the first half.
It was,
They always call him close over there.
He was probably taking.
We were trying to kill him.
Now, one of the Georges had 23,
Yeah.
and the other one had just 6, and he fouled out.
Did one of them take 30 shots, the big one?
A couple
Yeah.
of them fouled
Yeah.
out.
Mike took 30, made 10.
Perry Central had 3 of their top players foul out that night.
Yeah, they were big.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Joe made a comment after the game, he thought the officials.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you look at.
81 to 59, yeah, the
But when
officials
you
gave
look
him
at the
that.
score, he said, Joe.
You know,
had
one
other
thing we
issues.
can, when we look at the sectional, those first couple games, and even into the championship, there were, from a starter standpoint, Nick was on fire from New Albany on and continued. You would end up being the leading scorer in the sectional, I think with 57 points overall. The seniors, when I talk about the seniors from a scoring aspect, both you, Kevin, and Webb, you guys step up the game as well. You guys are really strong from an offensive standpoint throughout the tournament. The 4 people sitting here, I believe, or 3 of you will make all sectional team. I mean, I always believed that when you go in as a senior, that's the time, that's your time. This is it. This is the time to play. And guys that I had as a coach, or guys I played with, coaching 81 when you were coaching, our seniors stepped up. You guys stepped up as well. I mean, was it just, hey, we're Jasper, we're going to play, or was there any specialness about being a senior?
We wanted it. We wanted it
Oh,
more than they did.
There was definitely specialness about being senior.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
wanted to leave our mark if we could. I mean,
That's it.
right? I remember, before the year started, Dad printed a magazine back in the day,
Yeah.
called Hoopla magazine.
Yeah.
And they had a preseason, blah, 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 edition. And on Jasper it said, the headline said something like, Aces gone, Jasper looks to rebuild or something like that. That was his headline. And I came down to the dressing room that day and I said, well, the Aces may be gone, but the Jokers are still here. But yeah, you always want your senior year to be special, and Lord God Almighty it was.
And you took care of business, and the Cats repeat as sectional champs. And I don't want it to be lost on the fact that it had been about 8 years the year before you won, and then to actually repeat. Sometimes we take for granted how difficult it is to win one sectional, but then to come back and repeat in convincing fashion, which you did. The crowd's crazy, the floor's jammed, you're coming back to Jasper, you're in the cars, but you weren't done. But the excitement in Jasper that you can remember after winning that sectional, quickly.
It was crazy.
I'm talking too much.
I mean, I think we zipped around in Ed's Imperial
Yeah.
around the square, and people were running out and shaking our hands, and
I was looking at a picture today, that book you gave me, you might have it in there.
yeah, it's.
Where you guys are all hanging out.
We were all hanging out the back.
And I was, I'm sitting
Yeah, the
there
region,
driving
it
the car.
gets even
Yeah.
We're all hanging out.
Handed
I guess
us-
you were in back of
handed
us,
us papers.
in another car, in your car.
Reaching in the windows, yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
We couldn't get you out of there.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, it was.
And there's probably some things you can't even talk about on camera.
No, you can't.
You're probably right.
That picture there, that one of the car. was-
Yeah, but I
That's the
think
region.
that's
That's the
regional.
regional.
I think that's
Is that
regional.
back
It
in
definitely is.
And
we
we are going into the regional.
Harlan Inn.
I thought it was already there.
And just to put this in perspective for our listeners and the people that will view this later on, up to that point, I think Jasper had won 10 regional championships in a very great basketball period of decades, but only in the one-class system. Up to that point, I believe it was 10 regionals. You guys are going in there. You may not even be aware of that. Although I thought the Herald always did a great job of putting the stats out there and the individual scores, and really gave players something to look at, something to shoot for. But you're going in. First game is against Orleans. They're a pretty good basketball team. 18 wins, 20 wins on the
They
season.
lost twice.
22.
18.
Really?
I think they were might have been 22. 22 coming into
Time
the
they had the
game.
sectional, probably 20 and 2.
I didn't realize that.
Oh,
Let's-
yeah, they were.
Good
Let's-
thing you didn't know that.
Let's talk about that. Orleans is 20-2, and because it's the one-class system, we didn't get caught up in whether a school was 200, 500, 800, or 2,000. It was they're going to bring their best out on the floor. We don't. It's not by class. It's by desire and talent and ability. And Orleans was there, and Orleans would come back several times. In fact, they'd be back in the 90s when I took teams over there. So, your thoughts, Coach? Preparation. It's your second consecutive sectional, but you can only celebrate for a little while. Of course, Bob Simmers has the sectional championship. Coach comes out. Simmers takes you through the grind. You have a great time. Cabby's talking about everything and probably throwing a little pressure on you as well. What are your thoughts as you get ready for that regional, during that regional week? It's a fun week, by the way, for people listening. Regional week
great week.
is a fun week.
I don't think I went to class.
I got burned the year before.
By Salem in the championship
So
game.
we were kind of aware of a team coming in. And I can remember Gene Cato, I knew a little bit about Salem. And that year before, I talked to him about it. He said, don't take them light, because they're a pretty good basketball team. So that stayed in my mind for Orleans. And Orleans was a good basketball team. I don't know whether I wanted to play them again or not.
No.
They had Gilstrap,
Gilstrap with the Louisville.
University of Louisville.
Clint Tickness,
Yeah, but
and another guy, I can't remember his name, but he was a good scorer. And
They
we,
thought it was good going.
it battled all the way down the wire.
Oh, it did.
4 points.
6, 7 points, I think we
4,
won.
5, 6.
It was not easy.
Oh, yeah, the whole game.
77-71 was the final?
Yeah,
And
they were
we-
hanging with
and we
us.
got there and stayed there, 5, 6, 4,
All
6,
the way.
4,
And
7.
Nick has 31, and
Yeah, that was,
Kevin Manley has 28.
yeah.
And us three kind of went along for the ride.
Hey, I'm gonna say something.
Go ahead.
That's
You
right.
know, Kevin had 28, but if there was a 3-point circle, he'd have probably had 40.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he
Those
was
shots
hot.
were
Long
long
range.
range shots.
Yes,
He
he
was
was.
bombing
Yeah.
from a long way out. And if,
Yes.
you know, really, throughout the season, if we had a 3-point line, we probably would have won 4 or 5 more games.
Between these two guys.
Yeah, that's right.
But you're right, you're right. He
We
was
might
hot.
have
He
been
was on
that
fire.
far.
In Washington, the Hatchet House
Oh, God.
is different. It's bigger. It's 7,000 plus people. A little bit of a dynamic, but it's still a great place to play basketball because you're almost where you're in a bowl at Southridge. You're almost in a similar, but it's almost like a stage down there, and everybody
Yeah.
is just right on top of you looking down. And you go in there, you play a good Orleans team, 31-28. You guys do what you have to do to get through.
Watch.
And now,
You guys are hot.
and now you got a championship
Let 'em
game
shoot.
against Jack Butcher, who would end up being the winningest coach and a tough guy, not only to coach against, play against, sometimes to get along with, although I do love talking to Jack now. You're playing in a championship game. Your dad's got a connection to Lagodi. Lagodi has had a great run since they've consolidated the Catholic school that burned and the public school. Billy Butcher's on the team. Brian Canada, a name that everybody remembers in basketball. Hawkins.
Beasley.
Coach May,
Good athlete.
what are you saying to Coach Schulteis as you talk about the Lagodi matchup?
We thought that, well, we knew that Jack would hold the ball or whatever it took to try to
Control the tempo anyway.
control the tempo. And you gotta watch him with the referees because he could do that as well. So basically, we discussed it, we talked about it. And I'd throw out a few things, and of course, he had to make up his own mind to do what he did. And he usually did the right thing, so that's why, you know, that helped to win. And this is, we just talked about their style of play and individuals. They had some good individuals. And so we,
And you really are in a situation where you're playing a team, and I don't want to make them sound like the greatest pro, but if you look at that, their work over that period.
We had never beaten them.
Yeah, they had beaten you
That's
at
right.
Jasper
Yeah.
by 2 points.
All the way through,
was
all the way through grade school.
Grade
school.
Grade school.
I think they were state finals the year before,
Okay.
or
97.
Was it 2 years? Okay.
so
Canada was a sophomore when he went to the state.
Jim Trout.
Jim Trout.
They just have a great reputation. It's a championship game. I'm going to throw something out here because I'm sitting with the 5 guys. At least from the box scores, do you realize in the regional, Coach Schulteis played 5 guys, and you were the 5 guys against Orleans, and you were the 5 guys against Lagodi?
Wow.
You know,
Was there a point where you were needing a breather?
Oh,
well, he was sick,
I didn't know.
weren't
that.
you, Mike? You had the flu that whole weekend.
Well, not to mention the cut hand from cutting down the nets in Southridge.
That's right.
And you cut your hand with
That's
scissors.
right, you know what, and you know, it's funny about that story, I could hit free throws,
He was a good free throw
I could,
shooter.
I could shoot a little bit from outside,
Yes,
but
he
when I
could.
got to cut the net down, there was a pocket knife. Remember, instead of a scissors, and I felt it slice in the middle of my hand, it needed stitches.
Yeah, we took
And
it.
I kind of covered my hand, looked at it, and the blood was coming out pretty good.
yeah.
But from that time on, I couldn't hit a free throw,
I
I couldn't
watched-
shoot from outside, so that was.
So this was after the section.
We're referring back to the holiday tournament
Twist
there.
his-
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
going
that's
back.
right.
to
As
when-
far
and
back
that's
as
what
you
happened.
went, yeah.
So I was really embarrassed by that.
But he was sick,
But-
he was sick
but I
during the region, and he.
But you never
but
asked
he-
for a breather.
no.
Didn't feel good, but you didn't ask for a breather.
It was just exciting to be in there, you know, it was just,
And we
great
play.
atmosphere.
We live in an era, guys, where I've
Yeah.
said repeatedly, you know, coaches are substituting people out of the game, even on the high school level, before they ever need to be substituted out. Before they may hit 4 in a row, and all of a sudden you're saying, why is he coming out? We're talking about a regional championship semifinal. I mean, balls out. You're the 5. You play. That's how much confidence. That's how much
We had
trust.
a good bench, I mean.
You did have a
Tommy
good bench,
Berger, Mike
but
Trice,
none of
Mike
you at any
Brown.
point realize that or asked for
No,
a chance to come
I
out?
had no idea until you mentioned it now.
It was
I did.
intense. I had no clue until you said.
I didn't realize it till years later.
You told me,
I know that.
I don't think I
That's
remembered
crazy.
it.
I asked Coach Bay one,
He
about
told me
5 years
about-
ago, I said, why'd you guys do that?
It
He
was
goes,
that intense.
"If it's not broken, don't fix it."
I don't think.
That's kind of our motto was at that stage.
Except the
We were still ahead, still ahead, still ahead,
We
still
felt the
ahead.
adrenaline and no tired.
And you know,
For the whole year.
And I would say that I still believe that today, that the most
These
kids,
guys were
16,
trying to
17,
say,
18, 19 years old,
Kind of gel going.
20, 21 are the best years of their life.
Hey,
I don't know that they need to come out the way they're coming out. You guys,
Take him out.
it's just crazy.
Somebody else's shots.
Coach,
But you guys were kind of in your game. You know,
you were in a flow.
kind of what we wanted you to do.
The adrenaline was pumping.
Nobody was
Well,
doing crazy things.
And why break the momentum?
fortunately for us, the regional that year, and it's the first year they did it, I believe, was
Yeah.
Friday night, Saturday night.
Right.
It wasn't 2 games in one day. Now, if they would've had 2 games in one day,
I probably
that might have been a little bit
different.
too hard. But, and I remember coming to the gym Saturday morning for the walkthrough or whatever, and we always were pretty loose in the locker room and what have you. And I remember distinctly thinking, man, nobody's fooling around. And, you know, and on the bus ride over there was not a lot of chatter going on. I went, man, this is intense. You know, I mean, this is what we were working for. And Lagodi had won back-to-back regionals, like you were talking about earlier. And Brian Canada should have been all-star. He was terrific. I don't know why he wasn't. But on and on.
So Kevin, what are they saying? You come home, you beat Orleans, and you're getting ready for a championship game the next night. What's being talked about at your house? Is everybody silent? Everybody staying away from you? What's going on?
Actually, it was pretty quiet at my house. My dad didn't say anything about it. He said at the Orleans game, he said you guys had a good game, and I didn't appreciate it then because I thought he should have said you had a good game, but he never said that. It was always team played well tonight. You guys played well, and now I respect it way more than at that time. But no, everybody was. It was quiet. It was just really quiet. And I agree with what Slick's saying. The bus ride, when we went over to the game, I mean, there was nothing said in the locker room. It was quiet until you started talking, and it was a different feeling.
It was a
that
different
night.
feeling.
It was a different feeling. I remember that. There was no doubt that everybody was ready to go.
And you're ready, Nick.
It was intense.
You're coming off a 31-point game. How's it getting ready at your house? How's the preparation mentally?
Nobody talks to me. It's like, good luck, son, we love you, and out the door I go.
Go to the chamber.
I can't emphasize at that time, the intense rivalry that would have been between Jasper and Lagodi as communities. A lot of Lagodi people working over in the DuBois County area. They have been able to pump their chests as they do in this day and age with the success they've had. It's a championship game. They've got a 2-point win over you at home. You're going to play in front of an absolute packed house. Probably fire marshals were let in. They'd have to take people out. The game starts out 11-9 after the first quarter. Lagodi's got a 2-point lead, I believe. What are you saying after that first quarter, Coach? Can you remember thoughts, feelings?
I can remember Canada hitting 2 or 3 of them on the corner. I said, well, we're going to zone, we can't hit them all night. And I think in fact the zone out a little bit, if I remember correctly. And we controlled it pretty well. I don't know what his points were.
He ended with 24.
I
I tell you what, though,
Because
he
he
had
had
a few.
He had 3 or 4 buckets.
He hit a few in that zone, and you called me over and said, let's go man to man and put Al Sang on Brian Cannon. And that was correct.
Very well done.
You know, sometimes the total points don't really show the difference that the player made defensively in the adjustments. Coach, you go in, Coach May, you guys go in with 31-25 halftime lead. Thoughts before you address the team? Can you remember the feeling? I mean, the place is going crazy, I'm sure, and I'm sure Jack Butcher is chewing out the officials all the way into the dressing room. But what is the Jasper staff? What's your focus at that point?
Well, at that point, we called, when we went in, the players went in and sat down, and we kind of talked outside, and we thought what should be done, or what, we kind of thought that they were doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to change out too much, because, like you say, when it's not broke, don't fix it. So, and he talked to them, and sold them on it, they did not play well.
And Slick, what are you guys thinking? It's halftime. I know the coaches always gather before they see. What are you guys saying? You just pat each other on the back. This is what we got. Was there any other discussion, or was it just quiet?
It was pretty well quiet.
Quiet.
Yeah, and we knew there was still work to be done, and we knew how good Lagodi was, because Lagodi was the hell of
Yeah.
basketball. And they had
They
Brian
had
Canada.
seasoned players on that team, really seasoned.
And Brian Canada.
And he was
Yeah.
legit.
Was he physical, League?
Very physical.
Beasley was really
a big
physical.
guy. Hawkins was a big guy, and they played great defense. They were fundamentally sound. And you had to work really hard to get open and score. You know,
Yeah.
they were a very good basketball team.
So you go into an intense second half, third quarter. I think it's 44-44, knotted up at the end of the third. You lose a little bit of a lead. But what are you feeling, Kevin, as you come out of that third quarter? You're where you need to be. You feel like the team's playing how they need to play.
I think, I know that going into that fourth quarter, we went out of that huddle believing we were gonna win that game. And we weren't giving up, and we didn't let up in the fourth quarter at all. I think we actually turned it up a notch or two, maybe in the fourth, and just got back in there. It was tight to the very end. I mean, Slick hit a shot from the hash mark that put us up.
And fourth quarter had 8 lead changes.
Yeah.
I mean, it went back and forth.
that right?
Oh, 8 lead
It was
changes
8.
in the fourth quarter.
I knew it was, who got the ball last?
Yeah.
That's kind of how it ended up.
Yeah.
What were your focus when you went in? I know you've got some defensive focus, but are you feeling comfortable with how you're playing? Are you getting the help you need? I mean,
Kenny, when we were in grade school, Howard Weber scheduled Lagodi 3 times for us, just so we could beat them, and they beat us every time. They beat us from your freshman, JV, junior, or senior year, at
On
a
a
game
home
that's
floor.
specially scheduled. I wanted to beat them so bad.
Yeah.
In this game, that I just, that's all I could get in my mind. was
See,
that
I wasn't
we got
aware of that
them.
either
That's
till
all I
after
could
the
think
game.
about.
are you guys talking with each other throughout that game on the floor? Are you?
Yeah, we were always kind of chattering, but I missed a couple free throws in that game. And I got fouled again, I went over the sideline, and I threw a towel down. Rex goes, "What's the matter with you?" I said, "Can't hit a damn free throw." And he comes to me and goes, "You're gonna make both of these." So I went out, I hit the first one, I turned around, I looked over at Rex, kind of smiled. Rex gives him one of these, and one of the Lagodi guys goes, "Where you at?" "We're gonna beat your ass."
See, these are little things that
You know,
I didn't know went on.
I think these are the things that a lot of the teams, the championship teams, there's a point in the overtime or the third quarter or the fourth quarter of these tight games. And Coach, I know when you were the head coach and I played for you, we had similar moments against Du Bois and then Southridge in the championship game. But what you just said, where one of the coaches says something to break it up, or where you just lighten up enough to look, the other guy's got his hands on his legs and you're still feeling the energy. And that point you make right there is what I believe everybody on a championship team at some point in that game, that's where you find out what you got. For you not to be feeling good, not looking over to trying to find a breather, not trying to come up, you want to be on that floor. You want to stay on that floor. And all you guys, you're thinking, we never beat him. This is our time. This is our opportunity. And Slick, your dad has a lot to do with you guys growing up and seeing games and the Lagodi connection. And it's going to come down to the end. And as my Coach Schulteis and I saved the last part of that tape with Bob Simmer's call, and we've played it before, and I'm sure Joe, well, we play it every year, and we play it on the Coach K and Joe show, and I'm sure we'll add that into this video. But it comes down to the free throw line.
Well, it came down a lot before
Well,
that.
it came down to a lot of stuff.
I mean, they hit one
Lead
with
changes and.
Harbison hit one was about 20
Well, take us
seconds
through
ago.
that. Take us through that last minute
Yeah,
or
okay,
so.
okay, I
And
will.
guys, jump in. at
Jump
some
in,
point.
because
Jump in at any point.
we're trailing by one. Harbison hit one in the lane, I believe it was, and probably about 24, 25 seconds ago, we come down the floor, and I had the ball, and I threw it in the League. And League, being the smart man that he is, kicked it right back out to me.
That's what you told me.
And I remember, and I'm standing out there. That's right, man.
Right, kick it back out.
And I'm sitting there, and Harbison was off me a little bit, and I'm over on the wing where I like to shoot, and Kevin liked to shoot that shot too.
It's a
And I
three-pointer.
just said, hell, let's fire one up and see what happens, you know. But I was confident. As soon as I left my hand, I knew it was in. I mean, if you,
You were ready to shoot.
I mean, I was, you know, I didn't feel pressure. Funny thing about it, I wasn't nervous or anything like that. And I knew Al or Nick or Lee would probably get the rebound. You know, I'm dead serious. I mean, Al always said, Webb, I had you covered. There ain't no
When he
question.
let that ball out of his hands, I was zeroing in, trying to figure out I was gonna hit back iron, side iron, because wherever it's gonna go, I'm gonna get this dang rebound.
I was already backpedaling.
Yeah, he had confidence.
It was going in.
Yeah.
It was going in.
Yeah.
Al, you make a great point, because as coaches, that's what we're always teaching our players. It's not, you're not watching the shooter. What's the next step? Where's the
the
next
ball
move
coming
you gotta make? Are you getting to the backside? Are you blocking out? Are you preparing to step through? And so that's a critical point. Kevin, what are your thoughts as you get into that last?
Well, I see the shot go up and it goes, as soon as I saw it go through the net, and Nick's not kidding you, he did beat it back to the other end of the floor. And he and I were out on the front of this, because I was playing point at the time, so I had the shortest distance. We ran down the floor, I was on the right, free throw line extended, you were on the left side. We saw Brian Canada coming down and didn't know which way he was gonna go. He's either gonna go left or right. Instead of going left or right, he decided he was gonna take Nick on, which I still don't understand to
I
this
don't
day why he didn't come
understand
at me. But he went right straight at Nick, and I'm standing 5 feet away from him, and I see him plowing over. And I'm going, in my mind, I'm saying, that's an offensive foul. Sure enough, the official jumps up, offensive foul. Jack goes berserk.
Yeah, I didn't think Jack took that too well.
Jack went berserk.
Everybody went berserk.
That
Yeah,
gym
they
was the
thought-
loudest gym I ever heard. Ever in my
Yeah,
life.
and thanks to my Oscar that night.
Very good acting.
Well, you know,
Was it a charge in your mind?
It was.
it definitely.
I was standing there looking at it, it was a charge, there was no question
Well,
about it.
you know what
Right
he
in
did?
here.
Good play.
But you never know what
He
the
hit
official's
Nick.
gonna call.
At the same time, he made a little bounce pass to Beasley, and Beasley lays one in.
Yeah.
I mean, he's by himself. I
Yeah.
mean, we were
He was on the
cooked.
right wing.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
left-
we
We
were
didn't have
cooked.
anybody
I
there.
left Beasley to get in front of Canada.
Yeah,
And
he was wide open, but he was charged.
he was coming. I mean, he was coming. I said, come on, pal.
And we called timeout. We called timeout after that. I believe we did. They mounted. I don't know. We go over there. And place is just so loud. You couldn't hear anybody talk. And I'm standing there going, okay. And Ed's drawing up a play to get the ball in bounds. There's 4, maybe 5 seconds to go in the game.
Something like that.
And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm not going to touch the ball because they won't let me touch the ball, right? And I thought they wouldn't let you touch the ball. I thought it's going to go either somebody's going to hit a free throw for us. Well, sure enough, I break where Ed tells me, and I'm wide by myself. Al throws it to me, and I immediately just cover up. I don't dribble, I don't do nothing, I cover up. And they called a foul on one of them. I think it was on Canada. And to this day, they say it should have been a jump ball, but I mean, there was no way. And I remember hitting those 2 free throws. It wasn't a 2-shot then, that was bonus, wasn't it? I don't think they had 2 shots.
It's probably 1 and 1.
I think maybe. I don't know.
There was no bonus back then.
It was 1-1, and I had them both. And you talked about my Lagodi connection, and I used to go up, and Jack, at one time, when I was a kid, would open his gym up, and I'd go up there and shoot. When I was a little kid, Dad and Jack would sit there and talk. And it meant so much to me to beat Jack Butcher, as far as pride concerned. As soon as I hit those free throws, the first thing I did was go over and stand by Jack Butcher. Because that was the man I wanted to shake hands with, because I beat Butcher, and that really meant a lot to me. I mean, it meant a lot. I'm sure Jack was pissed at me. He probably wanted to tell me to get my little ass away from him, but then all hell broke loose after we won that.
Well, as you're drawing up, you guys are, I know you guys always talked a little bit before you went into that huddle. You're drawing up that last play. Are you sure Slick's gonna be open, or you've got this option, that option? What's your thought process, Coach?
Oh, I don't think we had it. Definitely throw it to Slick.
No.
We had options. You look for this one, look for that one. And maybe it's a third option.
And who's taking the ball out?
Al,
So
but,
one of the most go ahead, Coach.
we just figured that, if it went to Kevin or to Slick, either one of them could hit the free throws. And we just felt that, because we felt that's who this one was gonna get
Well,
it.
we'd like for him to get it, one of the two.
And the other two, but they broke, and they, like Slick
And
said,
they
he's
had to
open.
come- they had to come, these guys.
Were you shocked he was so open?
I
He was.
I was definitely
Well, we didn't.
didn't think I stood a chance to get the ball, to tell you the truth.
I don't remember what
Was
kind of
Lagodi
set
still
we-
stunned at everything that had happened? I mean, was it just,
Yeah, it happened so quick.
It did
because it did happen, it did happen.
We were all
It was
stunned.
over, we won, and
I mean, the
The place
officials
went
didn't waste
crazy.
any time, and it was moving, and, but you gotta take the ball out.
I'm kinda like
Are you
Bob
thinking
Allen when
anything
that
about that?
NCAA ran out there,
Me handling
who
on
the hell?
Here's the
JP
interesting thing,
Saab.
probably,
I got a picture of it. Oh, today.
probably, Coach, one of the most underrated parts of the game of basketball is the guy throwing the ball in, as we saw with IU the other night against Penn State. Al, is there any question in your mind who I'm going to? Are you trying to see both people, one here, one here? I mean, what really is your thought
At
as
that
they?
point in time, I was just thinking, I'll hope somebody gets open.
And you know,
Well, it was right in front of our bench. You took the ball right in front of our bench. That's where we
Yeah,
were.
Al was a more laid back type guy.
Cerebral.
And we wanted these two guys to have the ball. We didn't want these guys to get it. If they got it, okay, they got it, but that's what you want these two guys to have it.
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't want having to do with it.
Well, and these guys had unlimited range too. They could shoot 20, 25 feet on out, and,
Yeah.
Well, we thought we had
pretty
it.
darn well.
Not always.
Unlimited
Do
range.
you remember what you were thinking as a sophomore? What, if that ball comes in, where I'm going, what am I gonna do?
You know, it's just, everything tends to slow down, you know, in games like that, and I was just trying to just get in the right spot under the basket, just, you know, it was a great time. It's hard to remember some of those things, but, boy, the place was loud, it was
I'll
just.
never forget how loud it was.
Well, buzzer goes off,
What a lot.
horn, pistol, you win the regional championship. It's the first regional in 10 years. A lot of people don't realize it's the first regional championship for Jasper in 10 years. The feeling, the place is going crazy. Anyone that's experienced any kind of championship like that can just understand it. Coach May, assistant coach, part of building this. It's over. You're regional champs. What's your first thing? What are you thinking? What are your thoughts?
We congratulated each other because we were so.
Coach,
happy.
well done.
I mean, that's all you could do. The boys.
And the place is mobbed.
Oh,
People are flying
people-
on.
hey, you
They're
couldn't find anybody.
jumping. They're screaming. They're
The floor
going.
was covered. You couldn't find anybody. You couldn't find anybody to, you know.
It was a mob scene.
And you're soaking it up, Nick.
It really was.
You're
Oh,
soaking it up.
You know, the first guy I saw was Don Hayes. I don't know. I looked at Don, I ran over to him, and I yelled in his ear some obscenities. We won, you know, blank, 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 we won, blank, blank. And, well, I hugged him for, God, probably 20 seconds.
Since Hayes was probably one of his better students.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny that probably all of you may remember the first person you saw. Or Al, who's the first person?
Gosh, I just remember Coach's wife coming out. You guys were kind of hugging and stuff, and I was just kind of taking it all in.
Really?
You know, I was just enjoying this.
Leaky was looking at Lagodi cheerleader.
That's right. Yeah. Finally had a chance to, you know. Couldn't do it earlier.
Kevin, what about you?
No, I think the first thing that I remember when the game was over is it just happened so quick, but the bleachers just emptied onto the floor. But I know that I made contact with a couple of guys as soon as it happened.
Yeah.
And I do remember that, and from there it just went into chaos and bedlam. And I remember seeing Rex and Ed shaking hands, and we went over and we did it, you know, that kind of thing. And it was a memorable experience.
At what point do you see your dad?
As soon as I shook Jack Butcher's hand, he was sitting up in the corner, my mom and him, and I looked up at him, and he gave me one of those little waves or what have you. And then later on, they were down on the floor, but I remember immediately looking up in that direction to see Dad. But, yeah.
It's a time that none of you can forget.
No,
It's
Never forget.
I better not.
It shapes you.
Put me in a home if they do, if I forget that.
and the celebration's just beginning. It seems like it's forever to get out of that gym, but it doesn't matter because they're all waiting for you back in town.
Yeah.
And
just wanna enjoy the
Well, you
moment.
could
It
be.
started in Ireland.
You couldn't
Yeah.
couldn't
They
cut
stopped
back to
these
Jasper
programs.
for
It
women.
started in Ireland.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you guys just talk about the celebration. Just,
Well,
just go
there was
ahead.
a traffic jam out there by Ireland Sportsman Club, and we were in stop traffic. Remember this, Coach?
Oh,
And it's
yeah,
us-
I
it
think
was-
there's a
It was
pic-
us five guys and Coach
Shows a
Shilside.
picture.
Isn't that right?
Yeah.
How did
I
you
think-
like that?
We were in there with.
Oh, you were in there too,
I-
weren't you?
Yeah.
I think the starting five went with legal. I mean,
Yeah, Kevin's in
But
there.
it-
But anyway, they stopped, it was stop traffic right there by the Ireland Sportsman Club, and Coach went, oh, there must be a wreck or something.
Yeah.
And sure
You know, I
enough,
think I
here
remember
comes
seeing
Jasper
that.
cops,
There's the guys hanging out.
found us and led us into town.
Yeah,
And people were lining the street.
Here's
Oh, yeah.
the traffic
It was unbelievable.
yeah.
right there.
Oh, just crazy. And guys were bringing out cups of Coke to give us, yeah.
And this is, I mean, it's a massive celebration.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
talking about
Crazy.
not a few hundred people, not some parents.
Thousands.
We're talking about thousands of
Oh,
people
yeah.
from Ireland all the way into town, all the way around the square, all the way out of town.
Yeah, it was fun.
Just go ahead, guys. Just give your thoughts and your feelings.
Oh, there's the whole court, the whole square is party. I
Oh,
mean,
it's
people are just
packed.
everywhere. I mean, it looked like Strassenfest.
I think there were kegs up on the square.
Yeah, Beaner and Bomber,
Your
I
older
would,
friends.
I wouldn't know about that, but
No, I know,
they
yeah.
had a party at their place above, where your wife had the.
Bridal shop.
Bridal shop, yeah, upstairs. And there were parties going on all over the place, and a few of us guys got in a little late that night.
Hey, do you remember the gym?
Yeah.
Do you remember the gym, when we went to the gym?
Oh, yeah.
The gym was filled up
Yeah.
with people, the
Yeah.
pep, after
Oh,
the thing was over
It was
with.
just crazy.
Does anybody remember we sang The Lion Sleeps Tonight?
Yeah.
Oh,
You guys
okay.
remember that?
The whole Sunday they played that, didn't they? Yeah.
Wits
They
played
played that
it.
1,000 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, they started playing it, didn't they?
Yeah, Wits played it.
Over and
Oh,
over.
my
A
God.
long night, the gym, the fans. Did the fire trucks come out? Would you put them on the fire trucks if they would have come out? I mean, or did you worry about their safety at all, or was this just
He had
the emotion?
Fire trucks did not come out.
No, no part.
We were in cars. We
Yeah, you were in cars.
Car. You had players with you, Rex, I think.
Everybody had a
Yeah.
certain
I
amount
tell you,
of.
last time the fire truck was in 71, the section, we went to Arlen, they threw beer bottles and
Oh, yeah.
had everybody.
Get the hell back where you
Oh,
belong.
yeah.
And that's what I read
$71.
Jim Rose's, Mark Rose's book. I've been reading it. I haven't read it.
Yeah.
I didn't know they had those feelings against Jasper.
Oh, they did.
Do you feel like this regional championship helped to heal some of that between Ireland and Jasper?
I think the healing started with.
I think Mike Tice had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
He
Yeah,
liked
you know,
that.
you're probably right.
on
Mike Tice.
Mike Tice.
Yeah.
But,
Mike Leaders.
I'm just saying in Ireland.
yeah, no,
Harlan
I
guys.
don't think he's ever healed, has he?
Oh, no. As far as healing, it's not complete yet.
No.
There's
No.
people
Oh, yeah.
despise Jasper.
Oh, I can read that.
But
Read,
their
you
kids
get a chance to
graduated
look at
from
that
Jasper.
book.
Surely not.
Read it. You can't believe what they say about us.
Oh, just go talk. There's
So,
So we got,
About
So-
Ireland when they won the regional.
regional
One
championship, you
small
guys are,
town, one crazy.
Yeah,
town.
we're off the course.
we got.
you guys are, yeah, let's get back.
Yeah, let's get back.
Because we still got
This
another
is a
week of
fun
basketball.
night. This is a
We've got
fun
another
night.
week of basketball to talk about.
Oh, that's a fun week.
The place is going crazy.
Oh,
You
man.
guys are out late. I'm sure coaches, you waived the curfew for these guys. Sunday is just as crazy. Fast breaks with Bob Simmers and Cabby, and the ticket talk, and how many tickets you're going to get, and who you're going to play, and rehashing it. And the Lion sleeps tonight.
You know, a great feeling. A great feeling is to wake up Sunday morning and open the paper and see Cats in Sweet 16.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty cool feeling. And as in the Evansville game.
And we're in the one class system, so there's only 16 teams in the whole state of Indiana
Unbelievable.
that's going to play.
Right.
And Jasper is over 400 or 500 started the process. You guys are one of 16 teams left with a sophomore, some seniors. That week had to be, you talk about no school during your regional week.
Oh, hell.
I don't know if anybody had class that week.
I don't know where.
You two were supposed to be teachers. Did you have anything going on?
No, we had they replaced us. We took
Cabby's
off
a substitute
every
teacher.
Monday on the sectional.
Cabby substituted for you, right?
But somebody, anyway, we go
Now
to,
what was good about that,
Mrs. Seibert.
we go to
Mrs.
different
Seibert.
places and get tapes on who are gonna play
Yeah.
next week. And,
I remember,
we
now
go
we
down
took these
Monday.
guys out in Ireland, I don't know whether you guys went to Ireland, but later on, we took them out in Ireland to
To
the
sign-
kids.
Yeah, sign
The-
autographs and stuff.
The kids loved us, the little
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah,
remember-
that
I
started
remember
healing.
Monday
Some
practice.
schools, yeah.
You
That started
remember.
healing, but
did.
adults.
You already went to scout.
We always think
Jeffersonville,
already out to scout.
who we were gonna play. We were gonna
Yeah.
play Jeffersonville in the semi-state.
Yeah.
And I remember you already saying, you guys can beat this team. This team is very beatable. I went, okay, we're on a roll. We're going to state. I was convinced that we'd beat Terre Haute North or Vincennes in the final. That wasn't a problem. Well, little did I know that Jeffersonville was very, very good. I mean, wow. They
What
were
was
very
preparation
good.
like that week, Coach?
Well, I talked to Barney Scott, who I coached under at Jasper. He was a Seymour, and they tore him apart in the regional. He said,
Tough team.
he said, Coach, I said, what can we do? He said, I don't know if you can do anything. I said, can we backdoor 'em? They overplayed.
Oh,
real
yeah,
hard.
they were in your face. Yeah.
Real hard. He says, they're so darn quick, they recover. So I went to tell him, so let's just approach it and play a good solid game and try not to make turnovers. We didn't have any.
George Marshall was the
Yeah, George
outstanding high school
never
basketball.
got respect there either.
Should have, but he
George
was,
never got any respect. He write me a letter every year
He was a good man,
and
good coach.
tell us what a great job we did with what, more or less saying with what we had,
Yeah.
considering what he had.
They were very good, though.
He had
That team
five
was
five
very-
Division I players. Wayne Walls ended up playing 4 years at Purdue.
Purdue.
Jeff Fry and Tony
Would've.
Winburn were on
Yeah.
U of E.
Yeah.
One of them went to North Carolina. One of the guards went to North Carolina. 5 Division I players.
We started off pretty good in that game.
Well, yeah.
First quarter, we did all right.
We had a bad
And
call. We had a bad.
I'm
we
sure the
get
rest
you on a
took that
charge,
away.
and I thought we
There was a
scored.
momentum change, I remember
We
that.
did have a lead, we had.
Oh, yeah.
We had a little lead, and there was a charge involved, and they took a basket away from
I
us.
thought we were on our way. I really did. I thought.
I mean,
We're just
I-
continuing.
Sometimes
That's
on
what
a
I
is
thought.
that
start
what you're
like that, it
thinking? You're
helps.
feeling that the whole way.
First quarter, I was like, okay,
some
this is
point-
what we do. We're on our way.
How
again.
about,
And then
how
all of a
about
sudden,
the post guys? Did you feel like they were quicker, stronger? What did you notice right away?
As they mentioned earlier, they overplayed like no team we'd ever seen before. They were quicker, they were stronger
Big,
underneath,
strong
and it was
guy.
hard to get a shot off sometimes.
Little
They
Ray Burton
had great
was
jumpers.
faster than
They
lightning,
were,
man. That's
they were a
another
little
kid I
bit better
can't
than we were.
remember.
They had just extreme talent and went to the state,
Barney this later.
went to the state finals that year.
Yeah.
they were Final Four.
They're Final Four.
They should have won. They blew it in the afternoon. It wasn't
After
double
the game,
overtime.
Yeah,
but they were great, big guys.
They're big guys. They were quick jumpers.
Yes, they were.
I could
Jeff
outjump
Fry
them,
was-
but they got up quickly.
And you were considered a quick jumper
Well,
in most situations. So
Yeah.
you're saying just how quick they
yeah,
really
they
were.
were. These guys could get
They were
balls.
seasoned, well
If you're
coached.
good enough to play 4 years as a starter at Purdue University, Wayne
Yeah,
Walls,
yeah.
he's a pretty good player.
I mean, he was insane.
He's a pretty good player.
What was your recollection?
You know, they were just long-armed, if I remember this. They-
Sometimes it's not the height, it's the length
They were,
that
you
gets
know,
you.
it was really difficult to get a good pass, a clean pass off, because these guys not only were in their face, but they had long arms.
Yeah.
And I always felt like I had these monkey arms and hung down on my knees, but these guys really had long arms.
Yeah. And
But
we
they
never
were
seen
good
defense like
They
that.
were quick to defense.
They were.
Yeah, they backed up each other. They overplay, they backed up.
And we didn't shoot particularly well. I don't
Because they
think.
played such good
Yeah,
defense.
because of their defense.
Oh,
Defense was
you
awesome.
could only
Oh,
get
my
a decent
goodness,
shot
you
off.
I think I had 2 charges fouls on it because I thought I would pass Tony Winburn. And
He caught
there he
you.
was.
Yeah.
I'm like, well,
We were 16 of 53, coach, as a team. Were you happy with the shots, or you just realized today we're outclassed? At some point in the game,
Well, I
did you
was
guys?
told we were before we ever went in a game with Barney Scott. I mean, he just laid it on line because we were good friends. And, oh, they were.
I would say that in
We went through
They
each
were
position and he just told me about them. I knew what they could do.
Coach, after the game was over with and we talked about it, and I honestly believe that that was the only team that we ever played in high school that I said they were considerably better than us. I mean, not a little bit, I thought they were a lot better.
They were-
If we'd have played them 10 more times, I'm not sure we'd have changed the outcome that much.
The rebounds were about even.
They were tough.
Yeah, rebounds were about
I
even.
know that.
We played pretty well. It's just that we could.
The difficulty of the shots, getting the shots, getting in position
Yeah.
to get the best shot, you getting a good sight line, Nick having an easy
I
opportunity.
remember two better big guys than Wayne Walls and Jeff Fry. And those guys they were tough. And Tom
Walls
and Alan
was
told the same
lanky
thing.
and
They
wiry.
were just they were strong. physical.
Fry was physical.
Yeah, Fry was
Fry was a man. Yeah, he was a big
You
boy.
know,
Yeah, he was good
On the
stuff.
fast break show after the regional, it was you and Cabby and Simmers, there was somebody else there. But all four, you didn't pick, but they all picked Jasper with the semi-state. We had to believe it, man. They all believed it. Even Cabby said, this team's on a roll. They're going to win this thing.
Yeah, Kevin.
I think Cabby loved to get his name out there. He wanted to be part of
He
it.
wasn't gonna go against Jasper.
No, he wanted to be a part of it.
He wasn't gonna go.
Is it easier to end that season? I mean, you had losses in your careers. Was it easier to end that season with what you guys are talking about right now? We just played a much better basketball team than we were.
For me, it was. It's not an excuse because
If you face
you don't think you can beat
We were
everybody.
proud of what we did,
We
and
played
what we
team
accomplished
upset
through the
us.
whole season, and
It was no upset. I don't know what the line was with the gamblers, but I'm sure it was a
When did
dozen.
they end up in the state? Did they?
They got beaten after the game. Connersville beat them, and they had game one.
Yeah, they did.
They had the game going in overtime, and they threw a long pass to Wayne Wall, and instead of just laying it in, they're up by 2.
Okay.
Instead of just laying it in, he took a little
That's
dribble,
right.
one of those little dribbles,
Yeah.
and a guy from Connersville came and slapped it off the backboard. They went down, tied it up, and then they ended up getting beat that
Wow.
way.
Connersville had
And
a
then
really nice
Connersville
team.
won that night, Terry
Connersville had a
West.
really nice team.
But
No, we didn't
They
have
should've
anything to be
won the state.
ashamed of. We played our best.
the loss our junior year hurt a hell of a lot more.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
did
I
it?
still relive that junior year.
Yeah, Salem, Coach Gary Duncan, who would eventually
Yeah.
go to Southridge and coach there.
We got it by 3.
That's what I thought. You were third or fourth ranked.
I believe, I blame that game on the afternoon game we played them. We beat them 200-50. They took them out, we didn't get the flow. Everybody got to play, which he did the right thing. And then we couldn't get back that night.
Bailey got in foul trouble early too.
They're not able to defend themselves. I'm blaming on Winslow.
Well, let's
Blame it on anybody what.
let's kind of
Still got beat.
to reel it in and I just want to throw out some individual accomplishments. Of course, the team was 16-10. You won your second straight sectional, which would continue the streak, which would be 5. Which 1 is so tough to do. 2 is just wonderful. But 5 in a row, Coach Schulteis and Coach May, extraordinary in any situation. 16-10, regional champs for the first time in 10 years in the one class system. And I make that point because all the people that go through now are in the multi-class system. And it is a big difference. It does make a difference.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, it really is.
Big difference.
Nick, leading scorer in the sectional all games, leading scorer in the regional all games. Great accomplishments. Congratulations. 31 against Orleans. You end up on the all-area team. You also end up all-Southern Indiana third team, which again, there were some great players running through this part of the state. Slick, you end up double figures 2 years in a row, all sectional, all regional, SIAC all-star team, all area, and all Southern Indiana third team. Quite an accomplishment as well. Kevin, all sectional, all regional, third leading scorer in the regional with 41 points total, all area as well.
All handsome.
Mike Leagers, this would be the first of what would be 3 consecutive sectional championships for you and 2 regional championships for you. You would end up as the all-time leading scorer at Jasper when you were finished. You were, and I say this because I was working the Larry Bird camp as a sophomore, and I sat down with Larry when he wasn't playing basketball. He loved to drink a beer or two, and we talked about you, and he personally told me that pound for pound, you were the best player he played against. You got more out of your ability than anybody he had played against. And that was quite an accomplishment.
That is an accomplishment.
And,
Good job, buddy.
He really
And
respected.
he didn't like Jasper.
No, he hated Jasper. He told me that. The Village Saloon caused him more trouble than he wanted to mention. But you would have, your family were all outstanding players, but you would come along and you would lift the Leaguer's legacy even higher. And one of the great players. And Al, you proved that you come in and you work your way in and you see what you've got and you work with what you've got and you get that opportunity. And I used to tell players this all the time because you taught me that growing up and you taught me. You're going to have your opportunity and you better be ready when that opportunity comes. And you were. And when you were reinserted in that starting lineup against Bedford, Jasper went on to beat Bedford, win 3 games in the sectional and 2 games in the regional. And as you talked about, and you may not think it's a big deal, but I as a former coach do, you threw that pass in and it had to get where it was supposed to go, and it got into Slick Weber's hands. So I think that it's a great testament to you 5, and it's still a great accomplishment. You played you guys were the 5 guys that played both regional games, every second, every minute, to the end. Never asked for a breather, no matter how you felt. You wanted to finish what you started, and that's an outstanding accomplishment. Coach, you go on to finish as the second winningest coach in Jasper history, 5 straight sectional championships with an outstanding assistant coach. Rex, you would go on to be the head coach, and you would win a sectional championship. And I was very privileged to play for you in that sectional championship year of '81 as a senior. And I value everything that both of you taught me, as I would come back and coach at one point as well. Guys, before we end this up, and I don't want to take it out of your hands, you can say anything you want, but maybe your thoughts about each other, about your coaches. Just this, I try to tell people, you will never forget it. It may seem small to some, it may seem bigger than what you think, but you never forget your time as teammates, especially in the state of Indiana, when it comes to basketball, Jasper basketball, and cutting those nets down. It's just something, you know how the net binds itself as it goes up and ties? That's what happens as a team.
You said the magic word there. It's a bond that's built up.
We've maintained our friendship over all these years.
You're gonna make me cry, Kenny. You're gonna make me cry. These guys means the world to me. All these guys sitting right here, and Greg Erickley can attest to what Jasper basketball means to me. I tell you what, we were so lucky, 1, to have each other, and 2, to be playing basketball in 1972 in Jasper, Indiana. The fans here and the people, I love them to death. I mean, they were the best.
Go Cats.
It's a special time.
Oh,
yes.
And
That's 20 years from back in that early time. I'd say the 60s, all the way up into the 80s.
you know, it starts for us with the coaches, though. We were fortunate enough, and we mentioned Coach Yarbrough earlier, but he did a lot of the scouting, and he was gone at a lot of the games that you guys had him do, but he worked extremely hard for us, and they built confidence in us. You know, there was times we needed to be on, and they got us to that point, and so we always appreciate that. But you learn so much more than just basketball. There's more to it than just that game. And everybody here is still friends after 40 years.
Good for him. You know, we won a regional in 72. You won one in 73. You won one in 96.
Yeah,
And they won one in 2001.
should have got one.
Doesn't come along very often.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, so, you know, that's 4 of them in 40
Sectionals
years.
are hard.
Yeah, and
I
you
don't care what
know,
league we were
the
at.
one we won in '96 was the last one won in the one-class system. And I'll be honest with you, I take great pride in it. And guys, as we talk about who you beat in '72, we beat Lagodi and Jack Butcher in '96.
I still don't know how you won that game.
It was a very similar
It
game.
was very similar.
We just changed how we got the ball in. But
Yeah.
the point is, I sit here today with this great connection with basketball and Jasper and you guys. I remember you and got to be with you guys. And I remember you two. I remember the smiles and the spinning balls. I remember Kevin Manley popping those long rangers. Nick, one thing that I will say before, it's a compliment to you. I always thought of you as this larger-than-life athlete, great energy, tough as nails type of guy. A Jimmy Winslow of a different type. But as I looked at you, and Coach and I talked about this, you were one heck of a basketball player. And what you did from the second half of your junior year, and not to take anything away from the first part, but you really started to come into your own, to where you took it your senior year, and then after an injury, and I remember the Washington game, I remember when you hurt your ankle, I remember the process coming back, and the New Albany game will forever, and I know my brother Jim would say, I think it sticks out for fans everywhere, and obviously for Charlie Mitchell it does.
Yeah, he brought that up to me.
If you're going to get it done, you get it done on a big stage in your senior years. And for you four seniors, you got it done. And Nick, I got to give you kudos on your career. It's outstanding. It does place you up among the top players. Jasper basketball. Coaches, anything? Comments before we end this up?
Well, I just want to thank Rex and Ed, who lost him early. They worked hard for
God
me.
bless him.
And these guys put it online when we had to.
I'll tell you, Yardy would give pep talks while he was taping my ankles.
He loved
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Oh,
He was
he's a
committed.
great guy.
He was
Great
absolutely
Totally
committed.
committed.
In the past, what,
They
year
were
and
all-
a half, they've celebrated this 100 years of Jasper basketball, 100 seasons, whatever. And I've had the privilege of talking to a lot of old basketball players, and I tell you what, it's been a real treat for me. And the thing they put on at the gym the other day, back in December, that was special. And the guys coming out here just sitting around and talking. I'm sitting at the table with me, Kevin Manley, Mike Ballinger, Tommy Berger, Mike Kaish, Ed Schulteis, and Kenny Schulteis talking basketball. I mean, does it get any better than that? I don't think so.
It was an awesome evening.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really cool.
That was a good night.
I told my car that night, but it was a good night. I would do it
Glad I
again.
didn't come down.
I think
Did you
that
told
Yeah.
I
Get some
think
ice and just put it right in the tree.
you guys will always live in the hearts of so many Jasper fans. If you take away the 49 season, the 70s are considered the 5 sectionals in a row. And I know it, as a player, it inspired me, and as a coach, I would always teach my players about it, because I think they need to know what they're reaching for, what they're grabbing for. But to the fans that still have been around and saw that, to the young people that are now the adults, the 71 through 75 period, which we want to highlight and do this show, and Leahy, you'll be back a couple of times
Yeah.
before we're done.
All right. Nice.
And as will a couple of you guys, several of you guys, it is considered one of the glory golden periods of Jasper basketball. And you 6 gentlemen, 7 gentlemen, coaches, players, have such a big part of that. And don't underestimate. I know you haven't lost sight of it, but I run into people all the time. You probably wouldn't even believe it. They didn't play basketball. They cheered in the stands. They didn't even talk to you in school, but they were in class with you. And they want to know, have I seen Mike Leaders? What was Nick like? What was Kevin and Webb saying? Did anybody tape it? Did anybody write anything down? They still want to be in touch with what was a wonderful period of their
I
lives.
got one story for you real quick. 1995. And it was the 25th anniversary of LaGuardia going to state in 1970. And no, it might have been 85, it might have been 15 years. But anyway, my dad takes me up to Lagoya, we watch the ball game, they're having a get together afterward to pay respect, you know. Sure. You know, whatever you want to call it, reception for him. And Brian Canada's there, and I go up and introduce myself again and told him, you know, how much I thought of him and what have you. And Brian, I said, God, what a thrill that had to be for you guys to go to state, you know, your sophomore year and all that. Man, you were terrific. And I'm just, you know, praising him to death because he deserved it, you know. And he goes, yeah, it was great, Slick. He goes, but you guys won the big one. And I looked at him and said, what are you talking about? He goes, our senior year. You beat us our senior year. He goes, that was the big one. That's what we were.
That's what you
Our
remember.
senior year. So that, you asked earlier, what did it mean as a senior? So that's what, he went to the state finals, and he was still saying the big one was when he lost his senior year. That's what.
See, he was just a young leader.
He was sophomore.
Right, leader.
That's what it meant to
Don't
him.
be
to
quite
get
as
beat
much
as senior.
as if it had been a senior year.
Well, gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for taking us down this path again. And
Thank you.
stay
Thank you.
involved and keep talking and keep reliving, because the history that you have is the future that you create. And when it's a positive one and it's one that you can share with the younger people, it lifts them up. I want to thank everybody for joining us as we really did take a living history look at the 1971-72 regional champions, Jasper Wildcats. Yes, here's someone hand up. Thank you, and join us for the rest of our series on the golden years of Jasper basketball in the 1970s.
Cool. Thank you.